The moment Elena Rossi spoke fluent Italian in that Boston restaurant, she signed her own death warrant. A crime boss doesn't forgive public humiliation. A literature professor doesn't walk away from confrontation. When these two collided over a spilled drink, neither expected what came next. Obsession disguised as curiosity, protection masquerading as control, and a love so dangerous it would burn down everything they knew. This is their story. Stay until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. The rain came down hard that November night, turning Hanover Street into a slick mirror of neon and shadow. Inside Carmela's, the kind of upscale Italian place where reservations were made months in advance and the breadbasket cost more than most people's dinners, the atmosphere hummed with that particular Boston energy, half old money, half new pretension, all of it wrapped in the smell of garlic and expensive wine. Elena Rossi moved through the narrow spaces between tables with practiced efficiency, her mind half on the orders she was juggling and half on the Dante seminar she needed to prep for tomorrow. Teaching Renaissance literature at Boston University didn't pay enough to cover student loans and rent in a city that ate paychecks like appetizers, which was how she'd ended up here 3 nights a week, smiling at men who looked through her and women who looked past her. She didn't notice the shift in the room at first, that subtle change in air pressure that happens when someone important walks in. Someone feared. Luca Moretti didn't make entrances so much as he displaced oxygen. 6'2", broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost what Elena made in 3 months. Dark hair swept back from a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't so carefully blank. Expressionless. The kind of face that had learned early not to give anything away. 2 men flanked him, one built like a linebacker, the other thin and sharp-eyed. They took positions without being told, scanning the restaurant with the mechanical precision of men who'd done this 1,000 times before. Marco, the head waiter, practically tripped over himself, leading them to the corner booth. The best table. Always reserved, never occupied until Luca decided to show up. Elena picked up her tray, 3 entrees balanced perfectly, and started toward table 7. She'd have to pass right by them. Told him 3 times, Luca was saying in Italian, his voice low and controlled. 3 times I explained what happens when people don't listen. The linebacker nodded. Want me to? No. Luca cut him off. Let him think about it. Fear works better than pain. Pain ends. Fear doesn't. Elena kept her expression neutral, her pace steady. Not her business. Not her world. She'd learned years ago that in a city like Boston, you saw things, heard things, and kept your mouth shut about all of it. She delivered the plates to table 7, an anniversary couple who barely looked at each other, let alone her, and turned back toward the kitchen. That's when it happened. She didn't see the busboy. He didn't see her. The collision was pure physics, mass, velocity, and terrible timing. The tray went flying. 3 water glasses launched into the air in a perfect arc, and Elena watched in slow-motion horror as they tumbled end over end directly toward the corner booth, toward Luca Moretti's $5,000 suit. Ice water hit him square in the chest, soaked through the white dress shirt underneath, turned his expression from blank to something else entirely, something cold and dangerous that made Elena's stomach drop. The restaurant went silent. Even the kitchen noise seemed to stop. Luca stood slowly, water dripping from his jacket. His eyes locked on the busboy, a kid barely 20 who'd gone white as the tablecloths. You. Luca's voice was quiet. Too quiet. You know who I am? The kid stammered something incomprehensible. I asked you a question. Luca took a step forward. Do you know who I am? Mr. Moretti, I'm so sorry, You didn't think. Luca's hand shot out, gripping the front of the kid's shirt. You didn't look. You didn't use the brain God wasted giving you. Elena should have stayed quiet. Should have backed away, let Marco handle it, gone back to her section and pretended she'd seen nothing. Instead, she stepped forward. It was my fault. Every head in the restaurant turned. Luca's eyes shifted to her, and Elena felt the full weight of that gaze, like being x-rayed, like being seen through. Your fault, he repeated, still in Italian, probably assuming she wouldn't understand. How generous. The waitress wants to take the blame for her idiot coworker. I stepped into his path, Elena continued in the same language. her Italian flawless, unaccented. He was carrying a full tray. He couldn't see around it. I should have been paying attention. Something flickered across Luca's face. Surprise, maybe. His grip on the busboy loosened slightly. You speak Italian. Not a question, an observation. My grandmother insisted. Elena met his eyes, refused to look away even though every instinct screamed at her to drop her gaze, to show submission. She said a Rossi who couldn't speak proper Italian wasn't a Rossi at all. Rossi. Luca released the busboy entirely, his full attention now on Elena. From where? Calabria. Originally? Ah. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. That explains the stubbornness. The tension in the room shifted, though it didn't exactly dissolve. More like it changed texture, became something else. The suit is ruined, Luca said, switching to English now. His accent was pure North End, generations deep. Dry cleaning won't fix it. No, Elena agreed. It won't. So what do you suggest? This was a test. Elena could feel it. Everyone in the restaurant could feel it. I suggest, she said carefully, that you send me the bill. I'll pay you $5 a week until it's covered. Should take me about 4 years, but you'll get every cent. Luca stared at her. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. Not much of one, more like a sharp exhalation, but definitely a laugh. 4 years. He shook his head. And you think I'm patient enough to wait 4 years for payment? I think, Elena said, surprised by her own boldness, that a man who's built what you've built understands the difference between a genuine accident and deliberate disrespect. And I think you know damn well that soaking you with water wasn't deliberate. The linebacker tensed. The sharp-eyed one shifted his weight. Marco looked like he might faint, but Luca just tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. What's your name? Elena. Elena Rossi from Calabria, who speaks perfect Italian and has more balls than sense. He pulled off his soaked jacket, handed it to the linebacker. You're either very brave or very stupid. My students would say stupid, Elena said, but I prefer to think of it as principled. Students, he caught that. You teach? Literature, Boston University. A professor. Another flash of something that might have been interest. Working tables at Carmela's. Student loans don't pay themselves. Luca nodded slowly, like she'd confirmed something he'd suspected. Then he reached into his pocket. Everyone in the vicinity tensed and pulled out his wallet. He dropped $500 bills on the table. For the busboy's trouble, he said, and yours. Consider the suit forgotten. I don't want your money, Elena said. Wrong thing to say. She knew it immediately. The linebacker's hand moved toward his jacket. The sharp-eyed one took a half step closer, but Luca held up one finger and they froze. Everyone wants my money, he said quietly. Everyone wants something from me. But you, he gestured at the bills, you don't want it. I want to earn what I have, Elena said, not take handouts. Even from someone who can afford to give them? Especially from someone who can afford to give them. For a long moment, Luca said nothing. The restaurant held its collective breath. Then he picked up 4 of the bills, left one on the table. For the meal I'm not going to eat, he said, nodding at the one remaining 100. You can't refuse that. It's payment for services rendered. He turned to leave, the linebacker and sharp-eyed man falling in behind him. But at the door he paused, looked back at her. Elena Rossi, he said. I'll remember that name. It sounded like a promise, or maybe a threat. Elena wasn't entirely sure there was a difference. The rest of the shift passed in a blur of whispered speculation and sidelong glances. Marco pulled her aside during the dinner rush, his face pale and sweaty. Do you have any idea who that was? I gathered he's someone important, Elena said, wiping down a table. Important. Marco laughed, a little hysterically. Luca Moretti owns half the North End. The other half pays him protection. He's not important, Elena. He's dangerous. He seemed reasonable to me. Jesus Christ. Marco ran a hand through his thinning hair. Reasonable. 2 months ago, some guy from Southie tried to muscle in on one of his operations. They found him in a dumpster behind the harbor. Reasonable. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You live in books. You teach poetry. You don't pay attention to the real world. That's not fair. Fair? Marco's voice rose. Fair is you still having all your fingers after talking to him like that. Fair is you getting to walk out of here tonight instead of disappearing into the Charles River. Don't lecture me about fair, Professor. He stormed off, leaving Elena standing there with a spray bottle and a rag, feeling something she couldn't quite name. Not fear, exactly. Not excitement either, though there was something electric in her chest that felt uncomfortably close to it. She finished her shift, counted her tips, including Luca's 100, which she separated from the rest, not sure why. Walked home through light rain to her cramped studio in Alston, where her walls were lined with books and her desk was buried under student papers. She should have forgotten about him, should have written it off as a weird incident, a brush with a world she wanted nothing to do with. Instead, she lay awake until 3 in the morning, replaying the conversation. The way he'd looked at her, the way he'd laughed, the way he'd said her name like he was filing it away somewhere permanent. I'll remember that name. Yeah, Elena thought, staring at her ceiling. So will I, Tim Tim. 3 days later, she was grading papers at Vittoria's, a coffee shop on Hanover Street that made the best cappuccino in the North End and didn't mind if you sat for hours nursing a single cup. The owner, an elderly woman everyone called Nonna Lucia, had a soft spot for Elena ever since she'd helped translate some documents for her grandson. Elena was deep in a particularly painful analysis of Paradise Lost. The student had somehow concluded that Satan was the hero and Milton was secretly anti-Christian, which Jesus, when someone slid into the seat across from her. She looked up, ready to politely tell whoever it was that the table was taken. The words died in her throat. Luca Moretti sat across from her, no entourage this time, wearing dark jeans and a black sweater that made him look less like a crime boss and more like an off-duty model. He had a coffee in one hand and that same unreadable expression on his face. Professor Rossi, he said, fancy meeting you here. Elena's hand tightened on her red pen. Mr. Moretti. Luca. He took a sip of his espresso. Mr. Moretti is what people call my father, and he's been dead for 15 years. Luca, then. She closed the paper she'd been grading, suddenly very aware of how public this space was, how many people were watching. Can I help you with something? You could explain why you're not afraid of me? Direct. No preamble. Elena appreciated that, even as it threw her off balance. Should I be? Most people are. I'm not most people. No, Luca agreed. You're really not. He leaned back, studying her with that same intensity from the restaurant, like he was trying to solve a puzzle, like she was something unexpected. You know what people usually do when they meet me? He asked. They either kiss my ass or they piss themselves, sometimes both. But you stood there and told me you'd pay me back $5 a week, like I was the landlord and you'd missed rent. I didn't know who you were, Elena said. You do now, though. Marco must have filled you in, told you all about the terrible Luca Moretti and his criminal empire. He mentioned you were someone to avoid. Smart man, Marco. You should listen to him. Then why are you here? Elena asked. If I should be avoiding you. Luca smiled, actually smiled, and it transformed his face completely, made him look younger, almost approachable. Because I can't figure you out, he said simply. And I don't like puzzles I can't solve. I'm not a puzzle. Everyone's a puzzle. He set down his coffee cup. Literature professor. Works at Carmela's 3 nights a week. Lives in Alston in a studio apartment with more books than furniture. No boyfriend, no social media presence. No family in the city. Elena's blood went cold. You had me investigated. I have everyone investigated. He said it casually, like it was normal. Like privacy was a suggestion, not a right. Due diligence. Can't be too careful in my line of work. Your line of work. Elena felt anger building, hot and sharp. You mean crime, extortion, violence. I mean business. His voice didn't change, but something in his eyes hardened. Same as any businessman, just with different rules. Businesses don't break people's fingers. You'd be surprised what legitimate businesses do when nobody's watching. Elena started gathering her papers. This conversation is over. Wait. Luca's hand shot out, not touching her but stopping her motion anyway. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. About investigating you. She paused, surprised by the apology. No, you shouldn't have. In my defense, you made an impression. Not many people stand up to me. Fewer do it in Italian. I wanted to know who you were. And now you do. No, Luca said softly. I know facts. I don't know you. Against her better judgment, against every instinct screaming at her to grab her stuff and run, Elena sat back down. Why does it matter? She asked. Why do you care? Luca was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming once on the table. A tell, Elena noted. The only sign of nervousness she'd seen from him. You want the truth? He finally said. Always. I don't know. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been asking myself the same question for 3 days. Why can't I stop thinking about the professor who doused me in ice water and offered to pay me back $5 a week? Why did I have my guys track you down? Why am I sitting here when I have about 100 other things I should be doing? And what answer did you come up with? That maybe I'm tired of people who are afraid of me. That maybe it's nice to have a conversation with someone who sees me as just, he gestured vaguely, a person, not a weapon, not a threat, just Luca. Elena studied him, really looked at him, past the expensive clothes and the dangerous reputation. She saw something in his eyes that surprised her, something lonely. You're not just Luca, she said. You're Luca Moretti. You can't separate the two. I know. He drained his espresso. Doesn't mean I don't want to, sometimes. Then why not walk away? Get out. Do something else. It's not that simple. It never is. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. Luca smiled again, sadder this time. You really believe that? That people can just change? Just choose a different life? I believe people are more than their worst choices, Elena said, and I believe in second chances. Even for people like me? Especially for people like you. For a moment, something passed between them. A connection, fragile and unexpected, like recognizing yourself in a stranger's eyes. Then Nonna Lucia appeared, refilling Elena's cappuccino without being asked, eyeing Luca with the suspicious protectiveness of someone who'd seen too much and trusted too little. Everything okay here, cara? She asked Elena in Italian. Fine, Nonna. This is Luca. He's... Elena hesitated. What was he? A customer? A threat? Something else entirely? A friend. Nonna Lucia snorted, clearly not buying it, but she left them alone. A friend, Luca repeated. Is that what we are? I don't know what we are, Elena admitted, but you bought me coffee by proxy, so it seems rude not to give you the benefit of the doubt. The benefit of the doubt, Luca laughed. From a woman who doesn't even know me. From a woman who believes people deserve a chance to be more than their reputation. Careful, Professor. That kind of optimism is dangerous in this city. So I've been told. They sat there, two people from completely different worlds, drinking coffee in a North End cafe while rain started to fall outside. Elena should have ended it there. Should have thanked him for the coffee, gathered her papers, gone home to her safe, small, predictable life. But she didn't. Instead, she asked, "What's your favorite book?" Luca blinked, caught off guard. What? Your favorite book. Everyone has one. I don't read much. Liar? Elena leaned forward. You speak Italian like someone who was raised on it. Someone taught you, someone who cared about language. And people who care about language read. For the first time since she'd met him, Luca looked genuinely uncomfortable. My mother, he finally said. She read to me when I was a kid, before... He stopped, started again. She loved Dante. Used to recite passages from memory. The Divine Comedy? Inferno, mostly. Appropriate, considering where she thought we were all headed. He rubbed the back of his neck. I haven't thought about that in years. Do you remember any of it? Some. He was quiet for a moment, then, surprising both of them, he recited, Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita. Elena felt something in her chest tighten, the opening lines of Inferno. In the middle of our life's journey, I found myself in a dark forest, for the straight path was lost. You have a good memory, she said softly. Occupational hazard. In my business, forgetting things gets you killed. It's beautiful, though, the way you said it. Luca shrugged, but she could see color rise in his neck. My mother would hit me if I pronounced it wrong. She was a perfectionist. Was? Cancer. When I was 16. He said it flatly, like reciting facts, like emotion was dangerous. My father went first. Heart attack. Then it was just me and her, and then he made a gesture. Gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. It was a long time ago. But Elena could see it wasn't. Could see the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers curled slightly on the table. Grief didn't have a statute of limitations. My father died when I was 19, she said. Car accident. Or that's what they told us. Luca's eyes sharpened. You don't believe them? I don't know what to believe. He was a journalist, investigative, always chasing some story. And then one night he doesn't come home, and the police say he lost control on a wet road, and that was it. Case closed. But he was the most careful driver I ever knew, and the night he died he'd called me, said he was onto something big, something that was going to change everything. Elena wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. He sounded excited, scared, maybe, but not reckless, not the kind of scared that makes you drive badly. And you think someone killed him? I think it's possible, but I have no proof, no evidence, just a gut feeling that won't go away. Luca was quiet, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. What was he investigating? He finally asked. I don't know. He never got the chance to tell me. Elena met his eyes. But whatever it was big enough to get him killed. If I'm right. You ever try to find out? I looked. For about a year after he died, I dug through everything I could find. His notes, his files, his emails. Nothing. Either he was better at hiding things than I thought, or someone cleaned up after him. Or both. Or both. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared loss hanging between them. This got heavy fast, Luca said, not unkindly. You asked about my family. I did. He checked his phone, frowned. I have to go. Business. The kind that breaks fingers? The kind that pays mortgages. Mostly legal, believe it or not. I'm not sure I do. Luca stood, pulled on a jacket that had been draped over the back of his chair. Fair enough. I haven't given you much reason to trust me. No, Elena agreed. You haven't? Can I see you again? The question caught her off guard. Why? Because I want to. Simple. Direct. Because you're the first person in 5 years who's talked to me like a human being instead of a bank account or a threat. Because you make me remember things I thought I'd forgotten. Elena should have said no, should have drawn a line, established boundaries, protected herself from whatever this was. Coffee, she heard herself say. Just coffee. Here. Public. Deal. Luca smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Same time next week? Same time next week. He left, and Elena sat there with her cold cappuccino and her ungraded papers, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. Nonna Lucia appeared at her elbow. That boy, she said in Italian, is trouble. I know, Nonna. Dangerous trouble, the kind that gets good girls hurt. I know. And you're going to see him again anyway. I think I am. Nonna Lucia sighed, patted Elena's shoulder. Then be careful, cara. Men like that, they're hurricanes, beautiful from a distance, deadly up close. Elena thought about Luca's eyes when he'd recited Dante, the way his voice had softened when he mentioned his mother, the loneliness she'd seen beneath the power. Maybe, she said, but maybe hurricanes can change direction. Hurricanes don't change, Cara. They just destroy everything in their path and move on. But as Elena gathered her papers and headed home through the rain, She couldn't shake the feeling that Nonna Lucia was wrong. That beneath all that power and violence and carefully constructed control, Luca Moretti was just a man who'd lost his way in a dark forest. And Elena had always been good at finding lost things. The next week passed in a strange kind of anticipation. Elena threw herself into teaching. Midterms were coming, and her students needed all the help they could get, but her mind kept drifting. To the coffee shop, to Luca's voice reciting Dante, to the way he'd looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving. She told herself she was being ridiculous, that this was a terrible idea, that getting involved with someone like Luca Moretti was asking for trouble, but she also couldn't stop thinking about him. On Tuesday, a package arrived at her apartment. No return address. Inside, a first edition of Dante's Inferno, in Italian, with hand-tooled leather binding. The note was simple. For the professor who reminded me what I'd forgotten. L. Elena stared at it for a long time. It was worth thousands, maybe tens of thousands. She should return it, should put up boundaries, should remember that men like Luca Moretti didn't do nice things without expecting something in return. Instead, she put it on her shelf, right next to her father's collection of journalism awards. On Thursday, she saw him at Carmela's. He was with his usual crew, the linebacker, the sharp-eyed one, two other men she didn't recognize. They were deep in conversation, and he didn't notice her at first. But when he did, when their eyes met across the restaurant, something passed between them. Recognition. Connection. Promise. He nodded, just slightly. She nodded back. That was all. But it felt like more. Friday afternoon found Elena back at Vittoria's, papers spread out, trying to focus on grading, but mostly watching the door. He was late. 15 minutes. Then 30. Elena told herself she didn't care, that it was fine, that she hadn't been counting on seeing him anyway. At 45 minutes, she started packing up her stuff. Leaving so soon? She looked up. Luca stood there, slightly out of breath, rain in his hair, looking less composed than she'd ever seen him. "You're late," she said. "I know. I'm sorry. Something came up." "Something always comes up with you, I imagine." "Usually." He sat down across from her. "But I should have called." "You don't have my number." "I could have gotten it." "Would you have?" Luca smiled. "Probably. I'm not great at boundaries." "I've noticed." Nonna Lucia brought him an espresso without being asked. He thanked her in Italian, which earned him a grunt that might have been approval. "So," Elena said, "should I ask what crisis kept you?" "Better if you don't." "That bad?" "That complicated." He sipped his coffee. "Thank you for the book." "You're welcome. Though I should mention it's worth more than my car." "Your car is a 2003 Civic with a busted taillight and questionable brake pads. Most things are worth more than your car." Elena felt her temper flare. "You're still having me watched?" "No." Luca held up his hands. "I saw you getting into it, last week, outside the university. You were at BU?" "I was driving by." "Why?" "Because I wanted to see where you worked." He looked uncomfortable. "I know how that sounds, but I wasn't stalking you, I swear. I wanted to see your world. The place where you're Professor Rossi instead of the waitress who soaked me in ice water." Elena should have been angry, should have told him to leave, to stay away, to stop inserting himself into her life. Instead, she asked, "And what did you think of my world?" "It looked peaceful," Luca said quietly. "All those students with their backpacks and their coffee and their problems that can be solved with the right essay or the right exam score. It looked normal. Normal is relative. For me, normal is people who want something. Money, power, protection, revenge. Normal is violence waiting to happen. Normal is knowing that any day could be the day someone decides I'm more valuable dead than alive." He met her eyes. "Your normal looks a lot better than mine." "You could have my normal," Elena said, "if you wanted it." "Could I?" Luca laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Walk away from everything? Become who? A teacher? A businessman? Start over at 32 with no skills except intimidation and strategic violence? People do it. People like me don't. People like me die in the life or die getting out of it. There's no third option." "That's bullshit," Elena said sharply. You're not some tragic figure locked in a destiny you can't escape. You're a person making choices. Bad choices, maybe, but choices nonetheless. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. Elena leaned forward, her voice intense. I spend my days teaching literature to kids who think their lives are written in stone, who think they're stuck being who they are, doing what they've always done. And you know what I tell them? That every story can change, that the hero can become the villain can find redemption, and the person you are today doesn't have to be the person you are tomorrow. That's in books, Elena. Fiction. Fiction comes from life. People write what they know, what they've seen, what they believe is possible. She grabbed his hand without thinking. You're not stuck, Luca. You're just scared. His hand was warm under hers, solid. For a moment, she felt him start to pull away. Then his fingers tightened, just slightly, holding on. Terrified, he admitted, of what happens if I try to change and I can't, of what happens to the people I care about if I try to leave, of being weak. Change isn't weakness, it's courage. You have a lot of faith in people. I have faith in you. Luca stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Why? You barely know me. I know enough. I know you remembered your mother's love of Dante. I know you apologize for investigating me. I know you see your life as a trap instead of a choice, which means some part of you wants out. That's more than enough. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Rain drummed against the window. The cafe buzzed with conversation, and Luca Moretti held the hand of a literature professor who saw him as more than what he'd become. This is crazy, he finally said. Probably. You should stay away from me. Probably. I'm going to hurt you, not because I want to, but because that's what I do. I hurt people. Then don't, Elena said simply. Choose differently. Luca pulled his hand back, but gently. It's not that simple. It never is. He stood up, dropped money on the table. Too much, as always. I have to go, but Elena... He paused, something uncertain crossing his face. Thank you for seeing something in me that I can't see in myself. Come back next week, Elena said. We can talk more about Dante, about choices, about whatever you want. I'll try. That's all I'm asking. He left, and Elena sat there, her hand still warm from his touch, wondering if she was the bravest person she knew or the stupidest. Nonna Lucia had her answer. Stupidest, she said, appearing with a fresh cappuccino. Definitely stupidest. Thanks, Nonna. But brave too. Stupidly brave. She patted Elena's head like she was a child. Just like your father. Elena's head snapped up. You knew my father? Andrea Rossi? Of course, he used to come here, always asking questions, writing in that little notebook. Smart man. Good man. Nonna's eyes grew distant. Asking the wrong questions, though, questions that got him killed. You think he was murdered too? I know he was. Nonna sat down, her voice dropping. Your father was investigating the families, Cara. The organizations. He came to me 2 weeks before he died, asking about connections between the North End and City Hall, about protection rackets and dirty cops. Elena's pulse quickened. Did you tell him anything? I told him to stop, to leave it alone, that those questions would get him killed. Nonna's eyes glistened. And then they did. Who? Who killed him? I don't know names, but the whisper said it was a hit, professional, made to look like an accident. She gripped Elena's hand. And now you're sitting here with Luca Moretti, making the same mistakes your father made. Luca isn't... Luca is part of that world. Maybe he's different. Maybe he's better. But he's still part of it. Nonna stood up. Be careful, Cara. Some men are worth the risk, but make sure you know which kind you're dealing with before you bet your life on it. She walked away, leaving Elena alone with coffee and revelations and the creeping certainty that she'd just stepped into something much bigger and more dangerous than she'd realized. Her father had been investigating crime families. Luca was a crime boss, and Elena was falling for him. The connections were too obvious to ignore, too frightening to fully process. She gathered her papers with shaking hands, her mind racing. She needed to think, needed to figure out what this meant, if it meant anything. But as she walked home through rain that had turned to mist, one thought kept circling. What if her father had gotten close to the truth? And what if Luca knew what that truth was? Elena didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Nonna Lucia's words playing on loop in her mind. Her father had been investigating crime families. 2 weeks before he died, he'd been asking questions about the North End, about protection rackets, about connections that ran deep into the city's infrastructure. And now she was having coffee with a man who controlled a significant piece of that same territory. Coincidence? Maybe. But Elena had stopped believing in coincidences the day the police knocked on her door to tell her about the accident that didn't feel like an accident. She got up around 4 in the morning, gave up on sleep entirely, and pulled out the box she kept in the back of her closet. Her father's things. The few personal items the police had returned after clearing out his apartment. A watch that had stopped at 11:47. His wedding ring, which he'd never taken off even after her mother died. A leather journal, mostly empty, with notes that made sense only to him. She'd been through it 100 times. Dates, initials, cryptic references to meetings and sources. Nothing concrete. Nothing that explained what he'd been working on. But this time, with Luca's world as context, she saw patterns she'd missed before. NE. 3 families. Old structure. CT following dollars. Offshore. Ask M about 94. Protection grid. Who's paying who? City contracts equals leverage. LM. New generation. Different approach. Less violence. More business. Dangerous because smart. Elena's breath caught. LM Luca Moretti. Her father had been looking into Luca specifically, had identified him as different, dangerous because smart. She flipped through more pages, her heart hammering. Source says LM trying to legitimize, buying real estate, investing in legal ventures. But old families won't let him walk away clean, blood in, blood out. Meeting with M on the 15th, says he has proof of City Hall connection. Names, documents, this could be it. The entry stopped there, 3 days before he died. M. Who was M? A source? An informant? Elena grabbed her laptop, started searching. Andrea Rossi, journalist, Boston. The articles came up, dozens of them, years of investigative work. City corruption, police misconduct, white-collar crime. Her father had been fearless, chasing stories that made powerful people nervous. But nothing about organized crime, nothing published anyway, which meant he'd been killed before he could publish it. The sun was coming up when Elena made her decision. She needed answers, real answers. And there was only one person who might be able to give them to her. She just had to figure out how to ask without revealing that she suspected him of being connected to her father's death. The week crawled by. Elena taught her classes on autopilot, smiled at her students, graded papers without really reading them. Her mind was elsewhere, constantly circling back to the same questions. Did Luca know her father? Had he been involved in his death? Was this whole thing, the coffee dates, the conversations, the moments of unexpected vulnerability, just an elaborate game? Or was she being paranoid, seeing connections where none existed? Friday came. Elena arrived at Vittoria's early, claimed her usual table, ordered a cappuccino she didn't drink. Her hands were shaking slightly. She hid them under the table. Luca showed up exactly on time. No entourage. Just him in dark jeans and a gray sweater that made his eyes look almost silver. He smiled when he saw her, and Elena felt something twist in her chest. Either he was exactly what he seemed, a man trying to find his way out of a dark forest, or he was the best liar she'd ever met. "You look tired," he said, sitting down. "Couldn't sleep. Bad dreams?" Something like that. Elena wrapped her hands around her cup. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Did you ever meet my father?" The question hung in the air between them. Luca's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Caution, maybe. Or recognition. "Why do you ask?" "Because I found his journal, his notes from before he died." Elena kept her voice steady. "And your initials are in there. LM. He was looking into you." Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful, measured. "I never met your father, but I knew who he was. Everyone in my world knew who Andrea Rossi was. He was the journalist who didn't take bribes, didn't look the other way, didn't play the game." He paused. "He He was dangerous to people who had things to hide. Were you one of those people? Probably. I don't know what he knew about me specifically, but yeah, I had things worth hiding. Still do. Did you kill him? The words came out harsher than Elena intended. Luca flinched, actually flinched, like she'd slapped him. No. His voice was flat, final. I didn't kill your father, Elena. I didn't order it, didn't know about it, had nothing to do with it. How do I know you're telling the truth? You don't. Luca leaned back, his jaw tight. You're going to have to decide whether you believe me or not. But I'm telling you, I had nothing to do with what happened to Andrea Rossi. Elena studied his face, looking for tells, for the micro-expressions that meant someone was lying. She'd gotten good at it over the years, teaching students who made up excuses for late papers and missed classes. She didn't see deception. She saw something else. Anger, maybe. Or hurt. My father's notes say you were trying to go legitimate, she said. That you were different from the old families. Less violent, more business-oriented. That's true. Is it working? Luca laughed, but there was no humor in it. What do you think? You want the honest answer? Always. It's not working, or it's working too slowly. The old families see me as a threat because I'm changing the model. The young ones see me as weak because I'm not violent enough. And the legitimate business people won't touch me because they know where my money comes from. He rubbed his face. I'm stuck between worlds, belonging to neither. So what do? I survive. I keep my people safe. I make enough money to maintain power because the second I lose power is the second I'm dead. He met her eyes. It's not noble, Elena. It's not heroic. It's just survival. Who wanted my father dead? The question surprised him. Elena could see it. I don't know, Luca said slowly. But if I had to guess, someone he was getting close to exposing. Someone with enough power and enough to lose that murder seemed like the better option. Could you find out, if you wanted to? Maybe, probably. But Elena, he leaned forward. That's a dangerous road, the kind of dangerous that doesn't end well. He was my father. I know, and I'm telling you that digging into this, asking these questions, it's going to put a target on your back. Maybe I don't care. You should. Luca's voice was intense now. Because the people who killed your father won't hesitate to kill you too. And He stopped himself. You what? I don't want anything to happen to you. The admission hung between them, raw and unexpected. Elena felt her throat tighten. Why? She asked. Why do you care? Because you remind me that there's more to life than this. Luca gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. The city, his world, the violence and compromise. Because when I'm with you, I remember what it felt like to be someone other than what I became. I don't know if I believe you, Elena said quietly. I want to, but I don't know if I can. That's fair. Luca stood up. I wouldn't believe me either. Wait! Elena grabbed his wrist before he could leave. Don't go, please. Why? If you don't trust me, because I want to. Her grip tightened. I want to trust you, Luca. I want to believe that you're more than what everyone says you are. But I need time. I need to think. He looked down at her hand on his wrist, then back up at her face. Take all the time you need, he said. I'm not going anywhere. But as he left, Elena wasn't sure if that was a promise or a threat. The next few days passed in a blur of paranoia and second-guessing. Elena found herself looking over her shoulder, jumping at shadows, seeing threats in every unfamiliar face. She started taking different routes home, varying her schedule, doing all the things her father had taught her years ago about staying safe in a dangerous world. She also started researching. Really researching. Her father had taught her how to dig, how to follow money and connections, and the threads that powerful people tried to hide. She used those skills now, staying up late into the night, following leads that probably meant nothing, building a picture of Boston's underworld that was both more complex and more mundane than she'd imagined. Luca was right. He was caught between worlds. His businesses were a mix of legitimate and less so, his connections spanning from City Hall to the docks. He paid taxes, donated to charities, sat on the board of a community center in the North End. He also ran protection rackets, laundered money through his restaurants, and had connections to operations that touched everything from gambling to construction. But she couldn't find any evidence that he'd been involved in her father's death. And she looked. Hard. What she did find was more concerning. 3 weeks before her father died, there'd been a meeting, high level. Representatives from the major families, along with some city officials whose names made Elena's blood run cold. One of them was still in office, still making decisions about Boston's future. And her father had been investigating that meeting. The journal entry was cryptic. M confirmed, big meeting at the harbor. All the families, some city people too, planning something major. This is it. This is the story. It was the last entry before he died. Elena was still staring at her laptop screen trying to decide what to do with this information when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Elena Rossi? A man's voice? Unfamiliar. Who's asking? A friend. I knew your father. Elena sat up straighter. Who are you? Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. Boston Public Library. Main reading room. Come alone. I'm not meeting a stranger. Your father was investigating corruption that went all the way to the mayor's office. He had proof, documents, names, and they killed him for it. The voice was urgent now. I can tell you what happened, but you need to come alone, and you need to come tomorrow. After that, I disappear. How do I know this isn't a trap? You don't. But your father trusted me, and I owed him my life. Now I'm returning the favor. 2 p.m., main reading room. Don't be late. The line went dead. Elena sat there, her heart pounding. This was insane. Meeting an unknown source in a public place to discuss her father's murder? Every instinct screamed at her to ignore it, to delete the call log, to pretend it never happened. But she'd also spent 6 years wondering what really happened to her father. And now someone was offering answers. She looked at her phone, then at the journal, then at her laptop screen, still showing the web of connections she'd been mapping. Then she did something that scared her even more than meeting a mysterious source. She called Luca. He answered on the second ring. Elena? I need your help. Silence. Then, what's wrong? She told him. About the call, the meeting, the claims about her father's investigation. When she finished, there was a long pause. Don't go, Luca said finally. I have to. No, you don't. This is exactly how people get killed, Elena. Mysterious sources promising information in exchange for secret meetings? He said he knew my father, that he can tell me what happened. He could also be setting you up. Luca's voice was tense. Could be someone who wants to know what you know. Could be someone trying to draw you out. Or he could be telling the truth. It's not worth the risk. That's not your decision to make. Elena's voice was sharper than she intended. This is my father. My choice. Another pause. Then, fine, but I'm coming with you. He said, come alone. I don't care what he said. You want to walk into a potential trap? You don't do it without backup. His tone left no room for argument. I'll keep my distance. He won't even know I'm there, but I'm not letting you do this alone. Elena should have argued, should have told him she didn't need protection, didn't want his help, could handle herself. Instead, she said, okay. Okay? Thank you. She could almost hear him smile. Don't thank me yet. We don't know if this is real or if we're about to walk into something we can't walk out of. Optimistic. Realistic. He paused. Elena, promise me you'll be careful. I promise. I mean it. You see anything wrong, anything off, you get out. Don't wait, don't ask questions, just run. I will. And Elena? Yeah? Whatever happens tomorrow, I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere. The call ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts and a decision she couldn't take back. She barely slept again that night. The Boston Public Library at 1:30 on a Saturday afternoon was exactly what Elena needed. Crowded enough to feel safe, public enough to discourage violence, familiar enough that she knew all the exits. She'd spent countless hours here during her graduate work, knew which reading rooms were quietest, which corners had the best light. The main reading room was impressive as always, all soaring ceilings and long wooden tables. Tourists snapped photos, students hunched over laptops, researchers paged through archives. Elena found a seat with a clear view of the entrance and waited. Luca was somewhere in the building. She hadn't seen him arrive. He was good at being invisible when he wanted to be, but she felt safer knowing he was there. 2 o'clock came and went. Elena pretended to read, her eyes constantly scanning the room. At 2:15, a man sat down across from her. He was in his 50s, gray hair, tired eyes, wearing a jacket that had seen better days. Nothing about him screamed danger, but Elena had learned that danger rarely announced itself. "Elena Rossi," he said quietly. "You look like your father." "And you are?" "Michael Brennan. I was a detective. Worked organized crime for 20 years before I figured out that half my department was on the take." He pulled out his phone, showed her a badge, retired NYPD. "Your father came to me 6 years ago, said he was investigating corruption in Boston, asked if I knew anyone he could trust." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to be careful, that Boston's network ran deep, that he was playing with fire." Michael's eyes were sad. He didn't listen. What did he find? Evidence of a protection scheme that went all the way up. City officials taking money from organized crime in exchange for contracts, permits, favorable zoning decisions. Your father had documents, recorded conversations, proof that would have sent a dozen people to prison. Elena's mouth went dry. "Who?" "I can give you names, but you need to understand something first. These people are still in power, still dangerous. If they find out you have this information, they'll do to me what they did to my father." "Exactly." Michael slid a manila envelope across the table. "This is everything I could recover after he died. Copies of documents he'd sent me for safekeeping. It's not complete, but it's enough to understand what he was on to." Elena stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Why now?" she asked. "Why wait 6 years?" "Because 6 years ago I had a family, a wife, grandkids." Michael's voice cracked. "And I was terrified that if I came forward, they'd pay the price for my conscience. But my wife died last year, cancer. And before she went, she made me promise I'd do the right thing." He pushed the envelope closer. "This is me keeping that promise." Elena reached for it, her hand trembling. "There's something else you should know," Michael said. "The night your father died, he called me, said he was meeting someone from inside the organization who wanted to talk, who claimed they could give him everything." "Who?" "He didn't say, just that it was someone young, someone who wanted out." Michael stood up. "That's all I know. After that, he's dead, and the investigation disappears like it never existed." "Wait." Elena grabbed his wrist. "The meeting he went to, do you know where it was?" "Some warehouse in Southie, near the harbor." Michael pulled his arm free gently. "I'm sorry I couldn't do more. Your father was a good man. He deserved better." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd of library patrons, leaving Elena alone with an envelope full of 6-year-old secrets. She sat there for a long moment, just breathing. Then she opened it. Photos, documents, transcripts of recorded conversations, her father's handwriting in the margins, making connections, asking questions. And there, on the 3rd page, a name that made her heart stop: Councilman Richard Shaw. Currently running for mayor. The favorite to win. Her father had proof that Shaw was taking money from organized crime, that he'd been doing it for years, that his entire political career was built on corruption. Elena's hands shook as she flipped through the rest of the documents. More names, more connections. A web of influence that touched every corner of Boston's power structure. And at the center of it all, one meeting. The one her father had mentioned in his journal. The big meeting at the harbor. 3 weeks before he died, all the major families had gathered to discuss something. Something big enough to require coordination. Big enough to need political cover. What had they been planning? Elena was so focused on the documents that she didn't notice the man approaching until he was right next to her. "Interesting reading?" She looked up, her blood turning to ice. The linebacker from Luca's crew stood there, smiling in a way that didn't reach his eyes. "Just studying," Elena managed. "Yeah?" He glanced at the papers spread on the table. "Looks more like detective work to me." "I should go." Elena started gathering the documents. "Mr. Moretti wants to see you." "I'll call him later." Now. The linebacker's smile didn't waver, but his voice hardened. It wasn't a request. Elena's mind raced. Luca was supposed to be here watching, keeping her safe. Where was he? Fine. She slid the documents back into the envelope. Where? Outside, cars waiting. Every instinct screamed at her not to go. But the linebacker was blocking her exit, and causing a scene in a public library seemed like a good way to make things worse. She stood up, clutching the envelope, and followed him toward the entrance. They stepped outside into gray afternoon light. A black SUV idled at the curb, windows tinted dark. The linebacker opened the back door. Get in. Elena hesitated. Then Luca's voice came from inside the car. It's okay. Get in. She climbed in, and the linebacker shut the door behind her. The SUV pulled away from the curb before she'd even fastened her seatbelt. Luca sat in the back seat, his expression unreadable. The sharp-eyed man drove. The linebacker rode shotgun. You said you'd keep your distance, Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. Plans changed. Luca nodded at the envelope in her lap. Who was that? The man you met with? A friend of my father's. What did he give you? Elena clutched the envelope tighter. Why are you doing this? You're scaring me. Because someone put a hit out on you about 30 minutes ago. Luca's voice was flat, calm. And we need to get you somewhere safe before they figure out you left the library. The world tilted. What? Michael Brennan, retired detective. He's been working for the Castellano family for 3 years. Luca pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. He's the one who set up your father's murder. And he just set up yours. Elena stared at the photo, the same tired eyes, the same gray hair. No, he gave me evidence, documents about my father's investigation. He gave you bait, and you took it. Luca's jaw was tight. The second you walked out of that library with that envelope, you became a target. They know you have the documents now, know you're looking into your father's death, and they can't let you live with that information. How do you know all this? Because I've been tracking the Castellanos for 6 months, trying to figure out what they're planning, who they have in their pocket. And when you told me about the mysterious source offering information about your father, every alarm bell in my head went off. He met her eyes. So I made some calls, found out Brennan's been on their payroll since before your father died, found out he's the one who arranged the hit. Elena felt sick. The documents, probably real, but incomplete, edited, designed to point you in the wrong direction while they figure out how to eliminate you. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't find you. Luca glanced out the window. I have a safe house in Brookline, secure, off the grid. You'll stay there until we figure out what to do. I'm not hiding. Elena, no. She cut him off, anger rising through the fear. My father didn't hide. He went after the truth even when it was dangerous, even when people threatened him. And I'm not going to dishonor his memory by running away. Your father's dead, Luca said bluntly. And if you don't hide, you will be too. Then help me. Elena leaned forward. You said you've been tracking the Castellanos, that you know things, so help me finish what my father started. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's my choice. She held up the envelope. I have evidence, names, connections. If we can verify it, add to it, we can expose everything. Bring them all down. You're talking about taking on some of the most powerful people in Boston. I know. You'll have a target on your back for the rest of your life. I already do. At least this way it'll mean something. Luca stared at her, and Elena saw something shift in his expression. Resignation, maybe, or respect. You're just like him, he said quietly. Your father. Stubborn. Fearless. Too stupid to know when you're outmatched. Is that a yes? It's a statement of fact. He rubbed his face. Fine. We'll go to the safe house, look at the documents, figure out what's real and what's misdirection, and then... He paused. Then we'll see. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. The safe house was a brownstone in a quiet Brookline neighborhood, the kind of place where professors and doctors lived and nobody asked questions about their neighbors. Luca led her inside, the linebacker and sharp-eyed man taking positions outside. The interior was surprisingly comfortable. Hardwood floors, decent furniture, a kitchen that looked actually used. Not what Elena had expected from a mafia safe house. My mother's place, Luca explained, seeing her expression. After she died, I couldn't sell it. Kept it for emergencies. This qualifies? This definitely qualifies. He locked the door, pulled the curtains. Show me what Brennan gave you. Elena spread the documents across the dining room table. Photos, financial records, transcripts of conversations her father had recorded. Her hands were steadier now, anger replacing fear. Luca studied them in silence, his expression growing darker with each page. This is real, he finally said. Some of it, anyway. These financial records, I've seen similar ones. The protection scheme he's describing exists. The names check out. But some of this information is 6 years old. People have moved on. Operations have changed. If you're going to use this, you need updated evidence, current proof that the scheme is still running. Can you get that? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Maybe, but it would mean going after people who are supposed to be my allies, burning bridges I might need later. I'm not asking you to sacrifice yourself. Aren't you? He looked at her. Because that's what this is, Elena. If I help you expose this network, I'm signing my own death warrant. The families won't forgive betrayal. Then don't help me. I'll figure it out myself. Like hell you will. Luca's voice was sharp. You wouldn't last a week. You're a literature professor, not an investigator. You have no training, no contacts, no protection. So teach me. Give me contacts. Protect me. It's not that simple. It never is. Elena stepped closer. But you said you wanted out of this life, that you were tired of being what everyone expected you to be. Well, here's your chance. Help me expose this corruption and you'll be free. They can't hold power over you if you're the one who brought them down. They'll kill me. They'll try, but you're smart, Luca, smarter than they are. You said so yourself. You're different from the old families, less violent, more strategic. So use that. Outthink them. Luca laughed, bitter and sharp. You make it sound easy. I don't think it'll be easy at all. I think it'll be the hardest thing either of us has ever done. Elena reached for his hand. But I also think it's the right thing, and I think you know that. He looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her face. Why? He asked. Why do you believe in me so much? Because I see who you are underneath everything else, and that person is worth saving. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then Luca pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her, held her like she was the only solid thing in a world that was falling apart. Okay, he whispered into her hair. Okay, we'll do it. We'll finish what your father started. Elena pulled back just enough to see his face. Really? Really? But we do it my way. Carefully, strategically. We don't move until we're sure. We don't expose ourselves until we have enough evidence to take them all down at once. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe months. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Can you be patient? Can you? Luca smiled, and it was real this time. Warm. For you? I can try. They stood there in his mother's old house, surrounded by evidence of corruption and murder, holding each other like they could keep the world at bay through sheer force of will. Outside, the sun was setting, and in the gathering dark, Elena Rossi and Luca Moretti made a choice that would change everything. They were going to war. The war they declared that night didn't look like war at first. It looked like Elena going back to teaching, grading papers in coffee shops, living her normal life. It looked like Luca continuing to run his operations, meeting with associates, maintaining appearances. But underneath the surface, everything had changed. Elena moved into the Brookline safe house. Not officially. Her mail still went to the Alston studio. Her university ID still listed that address. But she slept there every night, surrounded by her father's documents and the new evidence Luca's people were gathering. The linebacker, whose name turned out to be Tommy, took up permanent residence in the downstairs guest room. The sharp-eyed one, Vincent, rotated shifts with two other men Elena gradually learned to recognize. She hated it at first. The constant surveillance, the armed guards, the way Tommy insisted on checking every room before she entered it, the way Vincent vetted every visitor before they got within 100 yards of the house. I feel like a prisoner, she told Luca one night, 3 weeks into the new arrangement. You're alive, he said simply. That's the goal. They were in the kitchen, Chinese takeout spread across the counter because neither of them had the energy to cook. Luca had shown up around 9, exhausted and tense, with dark circles under his eyes that hadn't been there a month ago. You look terrible, Elena said. Thanks. You really know how to make a guy feel good about himself. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? Luca rubbed his face. I sleep. How much? Enough. Luca. 3 hours? Maybe 4? He picked at his lo mein without eating it. It's fine. I've functioned on less. It's not fine. You're burning yourself out. I'm trying to keep you alive while simultaneously gathering evidence against people who would kill us both without blinking. Forgive me if I'm not getting my 8 hours. The edge in his voice surprised her. Luca was always controlled, always measured. This rawness was new. Hey! Elena moved closer, put her hand on his arm. Talk to me. What's going on? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, the Castellanos know something's up. They're not sure what, but they're suspicious. Asking questions. Watching my movements. Do they know about me? They know I pulled you out of the library that day. They know you're somewhere under my protection. What they don't know is why. He met her eyes. And they're getting impatient. What does that mean? It means they're going to make a move soon. Force my hand. Either I give you up or I declare open war. Luca set down his fork. And I'm not giving you up. Elena felt something warm and terrifying unfold in her chest. So we're going to war. Looks like it. Are you ready? No. He laughed without humor. I'm about as far from ready as I've ever been. But that's never stopped anything before. They ate in silence for a while, the weight of what was coming pressing down on both of them. I got something today, Elena finally said, from one of my father's old sources, a guy who used to work in the city assessor's office. Luca looked up. And? And he confirmed the zoning scheme, said it's still running just with different players. The permits are being fast-tracked for specific developers who pay protection money to the families. She pulled out her phone, showed him the photos she'd taken. He gave me 6 months of records, dates, amounts, names. Luca studied the images, his expression sharpening. This is good, really good. If we can connect these payments to specific city officials, we can prove the corruption is ongoing, not just something from 6 years ago. Exactly. He handed back her phone. You're getting good at this. I had a good teacher. Your father. And you. Elena leaned against the counter. You've taught me more about how this city really works in 3 weeks than I learned in 6 years of living here. Not sure that's a compliment. It's the truth. She paused. Can I ask you something? Always. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's because of me. There's more to it than that. Luca was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd ever heard it. My mother, he said, before she died, she made me promise something. She said, Luca, whatever you do, whatever you become, don't lose yourself completely. Keep some part of who you were supposed to be. He looked at Elena. I broke that promise, became exactly what this city made me. But helping you, finishing what your father started, maybe that's how I keep the promise now. Late, but not too late. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd be proud of you. She'd be horrified. But he smiled when he said it. But maybe also a little proud, if I actually pull this off. When you pull this off. Optimist. Someone has to be. Luca reached for her hand, laced their fingers together. It had become a habit between them, this casual intimacy. Elena wasn't sure when it had started, but she'd stopped questioning it. There's something else, he said. Something I haven't told you. Elena's stomach tightened. What? The night your father died. The meeting he went to. Luca's grip tightened on her hand. I know who he was meeting with. The room went very still. What? Elena's voice came out barely above a whisper. It was me. He was coming to meet me. The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena pulled her hand back, stepped away. You said you never met him. I didn't. He never made it to the meeting. Luca's voice was urgent now. Elena, listen. I was 26, trying to go legitimate, trying to pull my operations into legal territory, and your father reached out through an intermediary, said he was investigating corruption, wanted to talk to someone inside who might be willing to provide information. So you set up a meeting. Yes, at a warehouse in Southie. Neutral territory. Luca stood up. But he never showed. I waited for 2 hours. When he didn't come, I figured he'd gotten cold feet, decided not to risk it. Then the next day I heard about the accident. And you didn't think to tell anyone? To come forward? Come forward with what? I had no proof we were supposed to meet. No evidence of anything. Just a story about a dead journalist who was supposed to provide me with information about corruption. Luca's voice rose. You think the cops would have believed me? Would have cared? Half of them were on the take. Coming forward would have just made me a target too. So you stayed silent. I stayed alive. He moved toward her, but Elena backed away. And I've regretted it every day since, because maybe if I'd said something, maybe if I'd pushed harder, maybe my father would still be alive. No. Luca's voice was firm. He was dead the minute he figured out what he figured out. Meeting me wouldn't have saved him. It might have just gotten me killed too. Elena felt like the floor was tilting under her feet. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because I was afraid. Afraid you'd hate me. Afraid you'd think I was involved. He ran his hands through his hair. And because I'm a coward who didn't want to lose the one good thing in his life. I'm not a thing. You're the only person in 6 years who's made me feel like I'm worth saving. His voice cracked. And I didn't want to risk that. Elena turned away, her mind racing. Her father had been going to meet Luca, had trusted him enough to reach out. And Luca had been waiting for him, ready to help. But someone had made sure that meeting never happened. The Castellanos, she said slowly, they knew about the meeting. Had to be. They were watching your father, following his movements. When they figured out he was meeting someone from inside, Luca stopped. They killed him to prevent it, and Brennan helped them do it. Brennan's been their inside man for years, feeding them information about investigations, warning them when someone was getting too close. Luca moved to stand beside her, not touching, but close. That's why he approached you. Not to give you information, but to figure out what you knew, what your father might have told you before he died. He didn't tell me anything. Elena's voice was bitter. I was 19 and stupid and thought I had all the time in the world to talk to my father about his work. And then he was gone. Elena, you should have told me. From the beginning, you should have told me. I know. I trusted you. I know that too. Luca's voice was quiet. And I betrayed that trust by keeping this from you. I can't change that. Can't take it back. All I can do is tell you the truth now and hope you understand why I waited. Elena closed her eyes, tried to think through the anger and hurt. Luca had lied by omission, but he'd also been protecting himself, protecting the fragile trust between them. And ultimately, the information didn't change anything. Her father was still dead. The corruption was still there. The fight was still ahead of them. I need time, she finally said, to process this. Take all the time you need. I'm not leaving. I'm still in this. She opened her eyes, looked at him. But I need space. Tonight, I need to be alone. Luca nodded, his expression carefully neutral. I'll go. Tommy and Vincent will stay. You'll be safe. I know. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not for trying to meet your father, not for wanting to help him, but for not telling you sooner. I know. After he left, Elena sat at the kitchen table surrounded by evidence and takeout containers and the ruins of trust and cried for the first time since her father died. She cried for him, for herself, for Luca, and the impossible situation they'd put themselves in. She cried until she had nothing left, and then she picked herself up, washed her face, and got back to work. Because the dead deserve justice, even if the living were too flawed to deliver it perfectly. The next 2 weeks were tense. Elena and Luca maintained their working relationship. He fed her information, she organized the evidence. They built their case piece by piece, but the warmth between them had cooled. No more shared meals, no more casual touches, No more late-night conversations about anything other than the investigation. Tommy noticed. "You two fighting?" "None of your business," Elena said, not looking up from the financial records she was cross-referencing. "He looks like hell." "You look like hell. Seems like my business if it affects your safety." "We're fine." "You're not fine, but okay." Tommy leaned against the door frame. "For what it's worth, I've known Luca since he was 19, and I've never seen him like this. Whatever he did, he's tearing himself apart over it." "Good," Elena said, her voice sharper than she intended. "Is it?" Tommy pushed off the frame. "Because the way I see it, you're both miserable, and the people you're trying to take down are getting stronger every day you waste being mad at each other." "I said we're fine." "Right, fine." He left, and Elena threw her pen across the room in frustration. She knew Tommy was right, knew she was being stubborn, letting her hurt get in the way of what mattered, but she couldn't help it. Luca's revelation had shaken something fundamental in her, made her question what else he might be hiding, made her wonder if she ever really knew him at all. The answer came 3 days later, in the form of an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, photos of Luca, meeting with known criminals, exchanging packages, standing over a man who was clearly beaten, clearly terrified, and a note. "Ask your boyfriend what he really does for a living. Ask him how many people he's hurt. Then ask yourself if you're any better than the people you're trying to destroy." Elena stared at the photos, her hands shaking. She knew Luca's world was violent, knew he'd done things he wasn't proud of. But seeing it, seeing the evidence of brutality and intimidation, made it real in a way conversation never had. She was still staring at the photos when Luca showed up that night, looking exhausted and wary. "Can we talk?" he asked from the doorway. Elena held up the envelope. "Someone delivered these." His face went pale. "Where did you get those?" "Someone slipped them under the door while Tommy was doing his rounds." She spread the photos across the table. "Want to explain?" Luca looked at them, his expression unreadable. "Where do you want me to start?" "The truth, all of it, no more omissions." He sat down heavily, like the weight of what was coming was too much to stand under. "By beating him?" "By making sure he understood that there were consequences, that he couldn't do that again without paying for it." Luca met her eyes. "You want me to apologize for that?" "I won't. Some people only understand violence." "And you think that makes it right?" "I think it makes it necessary. In the world I live in, you don't stop violence by being nice. You stop it by being scarier than the people who start it." Elena felt sick. "How many people have you hurt, Luca? How many have you killed?" "Hurt? More than I can count. Killed?" He paused. 3. All of them trying to kill me first, all of them in self-defense. But I won't pretend my hands are clean. They're not. They never will be. "So what am I doing?" Elena's voice broke. "What are we doing trying to expose corruption when you're part of the same system? When you use the same methods?" "The difference," Luca said quietly, "is that I know what I am. I don't pretend to be noble or good. I do what I do to survive, to protect my people, to maintain order in a world that has none." He leaned forward. "But the people we're going after, they pretend to be legitimate. They hide behind badges and titles and elected office while doing the exact same things I do, worse even, because they're supposed to be better. That doesn't make you less guilty." "No, it doesn't." He stood up. "And if you want to walk away from this, from me, I understand. You should, probably. I'm everything you hate, everything your father fought against. You're also the only person helping me finish what he started. Doesn't make me good. Just makes me useful." Elena looked at the photos again, then at Luca, at the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the resignation in his voice. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, wasn't making excuses. He was just being honest. Maybe that was enough. Maybe it had to be. "I can't condone what you do," she said finally. "Can't pretend it's okay or justified or necessary. I know. But I also can't do this without you. I know that too. So we move forward, but Luca..." She stood up, walked around the table to face him. "No more secrets, no more omissions. If you want me to trust you, you have to be honest with me. About everything. Even the ugly parts?" "Especially the ugly parts." He nodded slowly. "Okay. No more secrets. And one more thing," Elena took a breath. Whoever sent these photos, they're trying to divide us, which means we're getting close enough to make them nervous. Agreed. So we push harder, gather more evidence, and we do it fast before they have time to regroup. Luca smiled, tired but real. You're sure about this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's my girl. The possessive made her bristle, but not enough to argue. Instead, she picked up one of the photos, the one of Luca delivering his warning, and tore it in half. We start fresh, she said, right now, no looking back. No looking back, Luca agreed. They shook on it, formal and awkward, and Elena realized how much had changed. They weren't the professor and the crime boss anymore. Not really. They were two people in over their heads fighting a war they might not survive, held together by mutual need and something else neither of them wanted to name. The evidence came together like pieces of a puzzle. Financial records from Elena's sources, inside information from Luca's contacts, photos, recordings, documents that proved the protection scheme was alive and well. But the centerpiece, the thing that would make or break their case, was still missing. They needed proof of direct communication between city officials and the crime families, something that showed explicit coordination. The problem, Luca explained one night, is that nobody is stupid enough to put that in writing. Or if they do, they use burner phones, encrypted messages, things that can't be traced. So how do we prove it? We need someone to flip, someone inside who's willing to testify. You know anyone? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Maybe, but it's risky. Everything about this is risky. This is different. He pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of a young man, maybe 25, with nervous eyes and a weak chin. Bobby Castellano, youngest son of the family. He's been trying to get out for years, but they won't let him. Family business? Something like that. But I've heard rumors he's tired of it. Tired of the violence, the pressure, the constant fear. If we could approach him, offer him protection in exchange for testimony, he'd never go for it. His own family would kill him. They'd try, but we could protect him. Witness protection, new identity, the works. Luca put away his phone. It's a long shot, but it might be our only shot. Elena thought about it. About asking someone to betray their family, their entire life, for a chance at something better. It felt wrong, manipulative. It also felt necessary. How do we approach him? Carefully, and soon, before they figure out what we're planning. The approach happened on a Wednesday night, outside a bar in Southie, where Bobby Castellano liked to drink away his problems. Luca went alone, his idea, over Elena's objections, with Vincent watching from across the street. Elena waited at the safe house, pacing, checking her phone every 30 seconds. When Luca finally called, his voice was tight. We have a problem. What happened? Bobby's willing to talk, but he wants a guarantee. We already offered protection. Not for him, for his sister. Luca paused. Turns out she's trying to get out too, and Bobby won't flip unless we protect both of them. Can we do that? I don't know. Two people are harder to hide than one, and his sister, Maria, she's not exactly low profile. She runs one of their legitimate businesses. People know her. So what do? We figure it out. Because without Bobby's testimony, we have nothing that'll stick in court. Luca sighed. I'm coming back. We need to plan this properly. He showed up an hour later with Vincent and Tommy, and they spread out maps and contact lists and backup plans across the dining room table. Here's the situation, Luca said. Bobby and Maria want out. They're willing to testify against the family in exchange for new identities and federal protection. But they won't move until we guarantee their safety. How do we guarantee anything? Elena asked. We're not law enforcement. No, but I have contacts. People who owe me favors. Luca pointed to a name on his list. FBI agent. Organized crime division. I helped him out a few years ago, fed him information that took down a trafficking ring. He owes me. You're going to cash in a favor with the FBI? Unless you have a better idea. Elena didn't. The next 72 hours were a blur of clandestine meetings and hushed phone calls and plans that changed every 6 hours. Luca's FBI contact, a guy named Morrison, who looked like he'd been wearing the same suit for 3 days, agreed to help but needed more proof before he could promise witness protection. I need evidence that'll convince my superiors this is worth the resources, he said. Something concrete. something that shows an active, ongoing conspiracy. We have financial records, Elena said. Proof of payments from developers to family intermediaries. That's circumstantial. I need direct evidence, recordings of conversations, documented meetings, something a jury can't explain away. Which led to the most insane part of the plan. We wire Bobby, Luca said. Send him back to family meetings with a recording device. Get them talking about the corruption on tape. Are you insane? Elena stared at him. They'll kill him if they find it. That's why we use the best equipment. Military grade, undetectable. Luca looked at Morrison. You can provide that? Maybe, but if this goes wrong, it won't. You can't guarantee that. No, Luca admitted. But it's the play we have. Bobby agreed, terrified but determined. The recording device was smaller than Elena expected, hidden in a button on his shirt. He wore it to 3 family meetings over the next week, and each time Elena thought she might throw up from stress. But it worked. The recordings were clear, explicit, damning. The Castellanos talking about which city officials they owned, which permits they'd bought, which competitors they'd eliminated. And most importantly, a recording of them coordinating with Councilman Shaw's chief of staff about an upcoming vote. This is it, Morrison said, listening to the playback. This is everything we need. So you'll protect them? Bobby and Maria? We'll start the paperwork, get them into the program, but it'll take a few weeks to arrange everything. They'll need to lay low until then. They can stay at one of my places, Luca said. Off the grid, safe. Which was how Elena ended up living in a safe house with 2 traumatized Castellanos who jumped at every sound and argued constantly with each other. This is a nightmare, Maria said on day 3, after Bobby had accused her of leaving too many lights on. We're going to kill each other before the family gets a chance. You'll be fine, Elena said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. Just a few more weeks. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who betrayed your entire family. No, I'm just the one whose father they murdered. Maria went quiet. I'm sorry, I didn't know. Most people don't. Elena went back to her laptop, where she was organizing the evidence for Morrison. But we're going to make sure everyone knows soon. The plan was simple, in theory. Morrison would take the evidence to the U.S. attorney. They'd build a case, grand jury indictments would follow, and then the whole corrupt network would come crashing down. In reality, nothing was simple. We have a leak, Morrison said, calling Luca at 2 a.m. Someone in my office. The Castellanos know we have Bobby. Elena, who'd been dozing on the couch, sat up fast. What does that mean? Luca's face was grim. It means they're coming. For Bobby, for Maria, for anyone helping them. They don't know where we are. They'll find out. They always do. He was already moving, grabbing his jacket, his gun. We need to move you. Now. All of you. Where? I have one place left. One property they don't know about. He looked at her. But once we use it, it's burned. And if they find us there, we're out of options. Exactly. They moved that night. Tommy and Vincent loaded Bobby and Maria into one car while Luca drove Elena in another. The roads were empty, the city dark, and Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. How did they find out? She asked. Could be anything. A paper trail, a witness, someone who recognized Bobby at one of the meetings. Luca's hands were tight on the wheel. Or Morrison's leak sold us out directly. Can we trust him? I don't know. I don't know if we can trust anyone anymore. They drove in silence for a while, heading south out of the city. Where are we going? Elena finally asked. Cape. I have a house in Wellfleet. Bought it under a shell company years ago. Nobody knows about it except Tommy. Not even Vincent? Not even Vincent. The house, when they finally arrived as dawn was breaking, was small and weathered, sitting on a bluff overlooking the ocean. Isolated. Defensible. Exactly what they needed. Bobby and Maria went inside without comment, too exhausted to care where they were. Tommy took first watch. Vincent called in 2 more guys Luca trusted, setting up a perimeter. Elena stood on the deck, watching the sun rise over the Atlantic, and felt the weight of everything crashing down on her. We're going to die here, she said quietly. Luca came to stand beside her. Maybe, but we're going to take them down first. You sound so sure. I'm not sure of anything. Except that we're right and they're wrong, and sometimes that has to be enough. Elena looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man who'd started as a stranger, became an enigma, turned into an ally, and maybe something more. He looked older than when she'd first met him. Tired. Worn down by choices and consequences. But still standing. "I'm glad you're here," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah. Even with everything. The lies, the violence, the impossibility of all of this. I'm glad it's you." Luca smiled, sad and small. "Me too." They stood there watching the ocean, two people running out of time and options and hope, and Elena thought about her father, about how he'd died chasing the truth, about how she was following in his footsteps, making the same choices, risking everything for justice. She wondered if he'd be proud, or if he'd tell her to run, to save herself, to let the corrupt stay corrupt as long as she stayed alive. She'd never know. But she liked to think he'd understand. Behind them, the house settled into uneasy quiet. Ahead of them, the ocean stretched endless and indifferent. And somewhere in between, the people they'd sworn to destroy were coming. The war they'd declared was about to become real. The first week at the Cape House passed in a strange kind of suspended animation. Bobby and Maria kept to themselves mostly, whispering in corners, jumping at every sound. Tommy rotated watches with the two other guys Luca had brought in, a quiet man named Frank, and a younger one called Joey, who couldn't have been more than 23. Vincent still hadn't shown up, and nobody wanted to say what that probably meant. Elena spent her days organizing evidence and her nights lying awake listening to the ocean, wondering if every creak of the house was someone coming to kill them. She'd expected to feel safer here, isolated and protected. Instead, she felt trapped, like they were just waiting for the inevitable. Luca showed up on day 8, looking worse than when he'd left. His shirt was rumpled, his eyes bloodshot, and there was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't been there before. "We have a problem," he said without preamble, finding Elena in the small office she'd claimed as her workspace. "Another one?" "The Castellanos aren't the only family looking for Bobby." Luca sat down heavily. Words out that he flipped. Every organization in the Northeast wants him dead, partly as revenge, partly as a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with the feds. "Morrison said he could protect us." "Morrison's one agent in a system that's already compromised. The leak in his office? Still there, still feeding information to the families." Luca rubbed his face. "We're running out of time." "How much time?" "Days? Maybe less. I've got people watching the roads, monitoring chatter, but they're closing in. It's only a matter of when, not if." Elena set down the file she'd been reviewing. "So what do we do?" "We accelerate the plan. Call the press conference for tomorrow instead of waiting for Morrison to build his perfect case. Get everything public before they can shut us down." "That's too fast. We're not ready. We're never going to be ready." Luca leaned forward. "But we have enough. The recordings, the documents, your father's notes. It's not perfect, but it's damning. And more importantly, it's better than being dead." Elena knew he was right, knew that waiting for the perfect moment was just another form of hiding. But the thought of going public, of putting herself in front of cameras and reporters and the entire world, it terrified her. What about Bobby and Maria? If we go public, they're exposed. They're already exposed. At least this way they'll be protected by public scrutiny. Harder to kill witnesses when everyone knows their names. Or it makes them easier targets. Everything makes them easier targets. Luca's voice was sharp with frustration. "There's no safe play here, Elena. There's only less dangerous versus more dangerous, and waiting is definitely more dangerous." She looked at the files spread across her desk. 6 years of questions, 6 months of investigation, all of it leading to this moment. Her father had died trying to expose these people. Luca had risked everything to help her finish what he started. Bobby and Maria had betrayed their own family. The least she could do was be brave enough to stand in front of a camera and tell the truth. "Okay," she said, "tomorrow. But we do it right. We prepare talking points, anticipate questions, make sure Bobby and Maria know what to expect." "Already working on it. Morrison's coming up tonight to help prep." Luca stood. "There's something else." The way he said it made Elena's stomach drop. "What?" "Vincent's body was found this morning, dumpster in Southie. Single shot to the head." The room tilted. Elena grabbed the edge of her desk. "Vincent. The sharp-eyed man who'd guarded her, who'd covered their escape from the library, who'd been with Luca for years. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "He knew the risks." Luca's voice was flat, but Elena could see the grief beneath it. "They all do, but it doesn't make it easier. How many more people are going to die because of me? Not because of you, because of them." Luca moved closer. "Vincent didn't die because you wanted justice for your father. He died because corrupt people would rather kill than face consequences. Don't take their guilt on yourself. It's hard not to. I know, but you have to try." He touched her shoulder, brief and careful. "We finish this tomorrow. We make sure Vincent and everyone else who died meant something." Morrison arrived around 7 that evening, bringing with him a federal prosecutor named Rachel Chen, who'd be handling the case. She was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, wearing a suit that had seen better days and an expression that suggested she'd heard every excuse and lie in the book. "Let me see what you have," she said, not bothering with pleasantries. They spread everything across the dining room table. Chen went through it methodically, asking questions, challenging sources, playing devil's advocate. When she got to the recordings Bobby had made, she listened to each one twice, taking notes. "This is good," she finally said. "Really good. But you understand what you're up against. Shaw has connections at every level. Judges, prosecutors, even federal agents. The second you go public, he's going to use every resource to discredit you." "Let him try," Elena said. "He will. And some of it will stick. He'll paint you as a grieving daughter who's been manipulated by a crime boss with an agenda." Chen looked at Luca. "No offense. None taken. It's not far from the truth. He'll dig into your past, find every embarrassing moment, every questionable decision. He'll make you look unstable, vindictive, unreliable." Chen's gaze shifted to Bobby and Maria. "And you two? You'll be traitors, rats. Families never forgive that. You'll spend the rest of your lives looking over your shoulders." "We know," Bobby said quietly. "Do you? Because once you do this, there's no taking it back. No reconciliation, no going home." "Home," Maria said, her voice bitter, "is the place that would kill us for telling the truth. I'm okay leaving that behind." Chen studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. Morrison, what's the security situation? I can get them to the courthouse, keep them safe during the press conference. After that, they go straight into federal custody pending the trials." "How long are we talking?" Luca asked. "Months. Maybe a year? These cases are complex, and Shaw's legal team will drag it out as long as possible." "Can you protect them for that long?" Morrison and Chen exchanged a look. "We'll do our best," Morrison said, which wasn't exactly reassuring. They spent the next 3 hours preparing. Chen drilled Elena on her talking points, interrupted her, challenged her, played the hostile reporter. Bobby and Maria practiced their statements, their voices shaking at first but growing stronger. Luca mostly watched, offering occasional suggestions, his expression unreadable. Around midnight, Chen finally called it. "That's enough. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be brutal." Sleep was a fantasy. Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through her statement over and over, imagining everything that could go wrong. Shaw's lawyers attacking her credibility. The families sending someone to the courthouse. The press deciding she was just a troubled woman with a grudge. Around 3, she gave up and went downstairs. Found Luca on the deck, smoking a cigarette, something she'd never seen him do before. "Didn't know you smoked," she said. "I don't. Quit years ago. But tonight felt like a good time to make an exception." He offered her the pack. Elena surprised herself by taking one. They smoked in silence for a while, the ocean dark and restless beyond the bluff. "You scared?" Luca finally asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you're smart." He flicked ash over the railing. "I've been thinking about what happens after. After the press conference? After everything. After the trials. After Shaw goes down. After it's all finished." He looked at her. "What do you want, Elena?" "Really want?" She'd been so focused on surviving, on getting justice, on making it through each day, that she hadn't let herself think about after, about what life looked like when this was over. "I don't know," she admitted. "I used to think I wanted to teach forever. Build a career, get tenure, be one of those professor students remembered decades later, but now..." She stopped. Now? Now, I'm not sure I can go back to that. Pretending the world is safe, that literature has answers, that everything works out if you just understand the metaphors correctly. You think you're too cynical for it now? Maybe. Or maybe I've just seen too much of how things really work. She took a drag, coughed a little. What about you? What do you want? Luca was quiet for a long time. I want to be someone my mother wouldn't be ashamed of. I want to wake up without wondering if today's the day someone puts a bullet in my head. I want... He stopped, laughed without humor. I want things I don't get to have. Like what? Like a normal life. A relationship that isn't built on mutual terror and desperation. The ability to trust people without calculating their betrayal potential. He looked at her. Like you, maybe. But without all the death and violence between us. Elena felt something tighten in her chest. Luca, I know. Wrong time, wrong place, wrong everything. He stubbed out his cigarette. But if we survive tomorrow, if we somehow make it through this, maybe we could figure out who we are when we're not running for our lives. That's a lot of ifs. It always is. They stood there watching the ocean, two people who'd been thrown together by circumstance and violence, wondering if they could be anything else when the shooting stopped. Whatever happens tomorrow, Elena said, thank you. For all of it. For believing me, for helping me, for giving me a chance to finish what my father started. Thank you for reminding me I'm more than what this city made me. Elena reached for his hand. He took it, his grip warm and solid, and they stayed like that until the sky started to lighten, and Tommy came to tell them it was time to get ready. The drive to Boston was tense. 3 cars, Elena and Morrison in one, Bobby and Maria with Chen in another, Luca with Tommy and Frank in the third. They took different routes, varied their speeds, did everything possible to avoid being followed. Elena watched the city come into view, familiar and alien at the same time. She'd lived here for years, walked these streets, thought she knew it. But that was before she'd seen beneath the surface, before she'd learned that power and corruption were the real foundations everything else was built on. The courthouse was already swarming with reporters when they arrived. Morrison had called in favors, used every contact he had to ensure the press conference got maximum coverage. Every major network was there, along with local stations, bloggers, anyone with a camera, and an audience. They entered through a back entrance, hustled through concrete corridors to a secure room where Chen did a final briefing. Remember, stick to the facts, don't embellish, don't speculate. When they ask about your sources, say you can't reveal them. When they ask about Shaw specifically, refer them to the recordings. Don't let them bait you into saying something that can be used against you. What about the families? Maria asked. When they ask about the Castellanos, tell the truth. You were born into that life. You tried to leave. They wouldn't let you. You're testifying not for revenge, but for justice. Chen looked at each of them. And remember, once you walk out there, you're committing. No taking it back. You sure you're ready? Elena looked at Bobby and Maria, saw her own fear reflected in their faces. Looked at Luca, who gave her a slight nod. We're ready, she said. The press room was packed. Cameras, microphones, reporters shoulder to shoulder. Elena stepped up to the podium with Morrison on one side, Chen on the other, and felt the weight of every eye on her. For a second, she couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The lights were too bright, the room too loud, the moment too big. Then she thought of her father, of the promises she'd made to finish what he started, of Vincent and everyone else who died trying to expose the truth. And she found her voice. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. Elena spoke first, laying out the evidence, explaining the connections, playing clips from the recordings. The room erupted with questions, but she kept going, determined to get everything out before someone could stop her. Bobby testified next, his voice shaking but clear, describing what he'd witnessed inside the family operations. The reporters were relentless, firing questions about his own involvement, his own crimes. He answered honestly. Yes, he'd been part of it. Yes, he'd done things he regretted, but he was trying to make it right. Maria followed, talking about the impossible position of being born into organized crime, about the violence, the fear, the way leaving was never really an option until it was. Chen wrapped it up by announcing the federal investigation, the charges being filed, the coordination with state authorities. She didn't name Shaw directly. That would come later. But everyone in the room knew who she was talking about. When it was over, Morrison hustled them out through a side exit to waiting vehicles. They were supposed to go straight to federal custody, to safe houses and protection and the beginning of new lives. They almost made it. The attack came in the parking garage. 3 vehicles, blocking their exit, men with guns, moving with military precision. "Get down!" Tommy yelled, already returning fire. Elena hit the floor of the car, her ears ringing from gunfire. Through the window, she saw Luca diving behind a concrete pillar, gun drawn, saw Frank take a hit and go down, saw Bobby pulling Maria behind a car, both of them screaming. Morrison was on his radio, calling for backup, but Elena knew it wouldn't come fast enough. The attackers had planned this, knew the timing, knew the routes. This wasn't random violence. This was an execution. A bullet shattered the windshield. Morrison shoved Elena lower, covering her with his body. "Stay down!" More gunfire, shouting, the acrid smell of gunpowder. Elena's whole body was shaking, her mind stuck on the fact that this was it. This was how it ended. Killed in a parking garage 30 minutes after going public. Then Luca's voice cutting through the chaos. "Southeast exit, move!" Morrison pulled Elena up, half-dragged her toward a different exit. She saw Tommy and Joey laying down covering fire, saw Chen shepherding Bobby and Maria toward the same escape route. They ran. Through concrete corridors and emergency stairwells, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Morrison had his gun out, checking corners, clearing paths. Elena's lungs burned. Her legs felt like water. They burst out onto a side street where more federal agents were waiting, having responded to Morrison's call. The agents formed a perimeter, weapons drawn, as Morrison pushed Elena into an armored vehicle. "Bobby and Maria," she gasped. "Right behind you," Chen said, shoving them into the same vehicle. "Luca? Tommy?" Morrison's face was grim. "I don't know." The vehicle took off, sirens wailing, speeding through Boston streets toward an undisclosed location. Elena pressed her face against the window, looking back, hoping to see Luca and Tommy following. She saw nothing but chaos and smoke, and the courthouse receding in the distance. The federal safe house was in a suburb Elena didn't recognize, a nondescript ranch that could have been anywhere in America. Bobby and Maria were taken to separate rooms for debriefing. Elena sat in a kitchen that smelled like old coffee and tried not to think about everyone they'd left behind. Morrison came in after an hour, looking exhausted. "We got them out. Luca and Tommy. They're alive." Elena felt something break inside her chest. "Where are they?" "Hospital. Tommy took a bullet in the shoulder, but he'll be fine. Luca's unhurt, just some cuts from broken glass." "Can I see them?" "Not yet. It's too dangerous. Shaw's people are everywhere, looking for any opportunity to finish what they started." "Did we get them? The shooters?" "2 dead, 1 in custody. We'll see if he talks." Morrison sat down across from her. "Elena, you need to understand something. What happened today, the press conference, the attack, it's not over. This is just the beginning. Shaw's going to fight this with everything he has. The trials could take months, and the families aren't going to stop trying to eliminate you." "I know." "Do you?" "Because there's still time to walk away. Go into witness protection right now today and never look back. And leave Luca, Bobby, Maria, everyone who risked everything for this. They'll be protected, but you..." Morrison leaned forward. "You're the key witness. You're the one who can tie everything together. Without you, the case falls apart, which makes you the priority target." Elena thought about that. About spending the rest of her life looking over her shoulder, hiding from shadows, never feeling safe. It sounded exhausting, impossible. It also sounded better than giving up. "I'm not running," she said. "We finished this." Morrison studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, but we do it smart. You don't leave this house without armed guards. You don't contact anyone from your old life. You follow every protocol, every security measure, no exceptions. Deal." "And Elena?" Morrison's voice softened. "For what it's worth, your father would be proud." The tears she'd been holding back finally broke through. Elena put her face in her hands and cried for the first time since the violence started. Grief and fear and relief pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs. Morrison didn't try to comfort her. He just sat there, present and solid, until she'd cried herself out. The next few days were a blur of interviews and preparations. Federal prosecutors wanted every detail of the investigation, every source, every piece of evidence. Elena walked them through it all, her voice hoarse from talking, her hands cramping from signing statements. Bobby and Maria were in similar boats, giving depositions that would form the backbone of the case. Elena saw them occasionally in passing, both of them looking shell-shocked and fragile. On day 4, Morrison finally agreed to let her see Luca. They met in a neutral location, a federal building downtown, in a conference room under heavy guard. Luca was waiting when Elena walked in, his arm in a sling, a bandage on his forehead, but otherwise looking remarkably normal. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." Elena didn't mean to, but she crossed the room and wrapped her arms around him, careful of his injuries. "You scared me." "I scared myself." His good arm came around her, holding tight. "Thought I was going to watch you die in that parking garage." "Tommy okay?" "Recovering. Pissed off that he got shot, but he'll live." Luca pulled back to look at her. "Morrison says you're refusing witness protection." "I am." "That's stupid." "Probably." "Elena, don't." She cut him off. "Don't tell me to run. Don't tell me to hide. We started this together, and we're finishing it together." Luca looked like he wanted to argue, but instead he just pulled her close again. "Okay, together." They stood there for a long moment, two people holding on to each other because everything else felt like it was falling apart. "What happens now?" Elena finally asked. "Now we survive long enough to testify. The preliminary hearings start in 2 weeks. After that," Luca shrugged, "we figure it out as we go. That's a terrible plan. It's the only plan we have." The guard knocked on the door. "Time's up." Elena pulled away reluctantly. "When can I see you again?" "Soon. Morrison's arranging it." Luca touched her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "Stay safe. Please." "You too." Walking away from him was one of the hardest things Elena had ever done. But she did it, because that's what survival looked like now. Brief moments of connection, then separation, then hoping everyone made it to the next meeting. The preliminary hearings were a nightmare. Shaw's lawyers were aggressive, attacking every piece of evidence, every witness, trying to get the charges dismissed before they could even go to trial. Elena testified for 6 hours straight, facing down questions that felt designed to break her. But she didn't break. Neither did Bobby or Maria. They told their stories, backed each other up, created a narrative so consistent and damning that even Shaw's expensive legal team couldn't shake it. The judge ordered the case to proceed to trial. That night, back at the safe house, Elena allowed herself to feel something like hope. They'd survived the first hurdle. The evidence was strong. The federal government was committed. Maybe they actually had a chance. The attack came at 3 in the morning. Elena woke to gunfire and shouting, grabbed the phone Morrison had given her for emergencies, dialed his number with shaking hands. "They're here," she gasped. "The safe house. They found us." "Stay in your room. Lock the door. Backup is coming." But Elena could hear the agents outside her room fighting, could hear doors being kicked in. This wasn't a small operation. This was an all-out assault. She grabbed the chair from her desk, wedged it under the doorknob, backed into the corner, waited. The door exploded inward. 2 men, guns drawn. Elena raised her hands. "Don't shoot." "Move," one of them said. They zip-tied her hands, dragged her through the house. She saw bodies, federal agents, down and bleeding. Saw Bobby being dragged out another door. Couldn't see Maria. They threw her in the back of a van. Bobby landed beside her a moment later, his face bloody. The doors slammed shut and they were moving. "What do we do?" Bobby whispered. Elena's mind raced. They'd been taken. The safe house was compromised. Morrison's backup wouldn't get there in time. They were on their own. The van drove for what felt like hours but was probably 30 minutes. When it stopped, they were dragged out into a warehouse. Because of course it was a warehouse, Elena thought hysterically. Criminals loved warehouses. A man was waiting for them. Late 50s, expensive suit, cold eyes. Elena didn't recognize him, but Bobby went pale. "Uncle Sal," he whispered. Salvatore Castellano, head of the family. Bobby's uncle. "You little shit," Sal said conversationally. "You know what you cost me? The business you destroyed, the reputation you damaged." "I'm sorry," Bobby stammered. "I didn't want to. They forced me." "Save it." Sal's gaze shifted to Elena. "And you." Andrea Rossi's daughter. You've been a pain in my ass for 6 months. Where's Maria? Elena asked. Safe. For now. Whether she stays that way depends on you two. What do you want? Sal smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I want you to recant, both of you. Go on TV tomorrow. Say you lied. Say you were coerced. Say whatever you need to say to destroy your own credibility. Do that, and Maria lives. Maybe you live too. And if we don't? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. Then you all die, slowly. And I make sure your deaths are public enough to send a message to anyone else thinking about cooperating with the feds. Bobby was crying now. Please, Uncle Sal. I'll do anything. Just don't hurt Maria. Then you know what to do. Sal left them there, tied to chairs in the middle of the warehouse, guards watching from the shadows. Elena's mind raced, looking for options, finding none. We can't recant, she said quietly. Maria dies if we don't, Bobby shot back. Maria dies either way. You think he's going to let any of us walk out of here alive after what we've done? So what do? We stall. We survive. We wait for Morrison to find us. And if he doesn't? Elena didn't have an answer for that. They sat in silence for hours. Elena's wrists ached from the zip ties, her shoulders cramping from the awkward position. She tried to think of escape plans, rescue scenarios, anything that didn't end with them dead in this warehouse. Then she heard it. Distant sirens. Getting closer. The guards heard it too. Started moving, shouting orders, preparing for a fight. And then the doors exploded inward. Federal agents poured in, moving with military precision. Gunfire erupted. Elena threw herself sideways, chair and all, trying to get behind cover. Through the chaos, she saw Luca. Not in federal gear, but right beside them, moving like he'd done this 1,000 times. He took down 2 guards before they could react, reached Elena, cut her zip ties with a knife. You okay? He asked, already moving to free Bobby. How did you find us? Tracking chip in your phone, Morrison's idea. He helped her up. Can you run? Yes. Then run. Now. They ran. Through the warehouse, through smoke and gunfire, following Luca toward an exit. Federal agents covered their escape, engaging the remaining guards. Outside, Morrison was waiting with a tactical team. Get them in the vehicle! Elena practically fell into the armored car, Bobby right behind her. Luca climbed in after them, breathing hard. Maria? Bobby asked desperately. Safe, Morrison said. We got her out first. She's already in protective custody. Bobby collapsed in relief. The vehicle sped away from the warehouse, sirens wailing. Elena sat there, still shaking, trying to process what had just happened. How did you know where we were? She asked Morrison. We didn't, not at first, but Luca... Morrison gestured at him. He called in every favor he had, used every contact, found someone who knew where Sal was operating. We got there as fast as we could. Elena looked at Luca. You saved us. We saved each other. His voice was tired. That's what we do now. The new safe house was in New Hampshire, guarded by twice as many agents as before. Bobby and Maria were reunited, both of them traumatized but alive. Elena gave her statement to a prosecutor who looked increasingly grim as she described the kidnapping. This changes things, he said. Kidnapping federal witnesses, assaulting agents. Shaw's people just handed us more charges. But it also means they're desperate. Desperate enough to try again? Elena asked. Probably. Which was how Elena found herself in witness protection before the trial even started. New name, new location, guards rotating every 6 hours. Bobby and Maria were sent to separate locations for their own safety, and Luca disappeared. Morrison wouldn't tell her where he went, said it was better if she didn't know. Elena understood the logic, but hated it anyway. After everything they had been through, being separated felt like losing a limb. The weeks crawled by. Elena watched from isolation as the case built momentum. More witnesses came forward, more evidence surfaced. The web of corruption Shaw had built started unraveling in spectacular fashion. And then, 3 weeks before the trial was set to start, Morrison showed up at her safe house with news that made her blood run cold. There's been an incident, he said, at one of our secure locations. Elena's heart stopped. Bobby? Maria? Luca. The world tilted. What happened? There was an assault, a coordinated attack by multiple operators. We lost 3 agents. The safe house was destroyed. And Luca? Morrison's expression was carefully neutral. We haven't found him. He's either dead or they took him. Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. You're telling me he's gone? I'm telling you we don't know. There was a lot of blood, but no body. Could mean anything. Or it could mean he's being tortured somewhere because he helped me. Elena's voice broke. We have to find him. We're trying. Every available resource is on this, but Elena, Morrison's voice was gentle. You need to prepare yourself for the possibility that he's not coming back. She refused to believe it, refused to accept that Luca, who'd survived so much, who'd fought so hard, could just be gone. But as days passed with no word, no leads, no trace of him, Elena felt hope start to slip away. The trial began without him. Elena testified, her voice mechanical, her mind elsewhere. Bobby and Maria testified, both of them looking shattered. The evidence was presented, damning and comprehensive. Shaw's lawyers fought hard, but they were fighting a losing battle. The recordings alone were enough to convict. Everything else was just additional nails in the coffin. The jury deliberated for 6 hours before returning with guilty verdicts on all counts. Shaw was sentenced to 20 years. His associates got varying terms. The corrupt police officers, the dirty judges, the city officials who'd enabled it all, they all went down. Elena sat in the courtroom and felt nothing. They'd won. Justice had been served. Her father's death had been avenged. But Luca was still gone. After the trial, Morrison came to see her one last time. What now? She asked. Now you disappear. New name, new life, somewhere far from Boston. You'll be safe. Will I? As safe as we can make you. He paused. For what it's worth, you did good. Your father would be proud. Everyone keeps saying that. But my father's dead, Luca's probably dead, and I'm about to become someone else entirely. Doesn't feel like winning. Morrison didn't have an answer for that. The final arrangements were made. Elena would become Sarah Mitchell, relocating to Portland, Oregon. She'd have a teaching job waiting, a small apartment, a fresh start. It was everything she should have wanted, everything that should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like running away. The night before she was scheduled to leave, Elena stood at the window of her safe house, looking out at darkness, and made a decision. She wasn't running, not anymore. She picked up the phone and called Morrison. I need a favor, one last favor. What kind of favor? The dangerous kind. There was a long silence. Then, tell me what you need. What Elena needed was access to Luca's network. His contacts, his information sources, his people. If anyone could find him, it would be someone from his world, not federal agents who didn't understand how organized crime really worked. Morrison got her in touch with Tommy, who'd recovered from his gunshot wound and was lying low in Southie. You want to find Luca, Tommy said when she called. Not a question, a statement. Yes, Morrison thinks he's dead. Morrison doesn't know him like we do. Luca's a survivor. If there's even a chance he's alive, I have to try. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Okay, I know some people. People who hear things. Give me a few days. Those few days felt like years. Elena packed her bag for Portland, went through the motions of preparing for witness protection, all while waiting for Tommy's call. It came on day 3. I found something, he said. Not sure what it means, but someone matching Luca's description was spotted at a private hospital in Connecticut. They're calling him a John Doe, says he was brought in unconscious 2 weeks ago. Is he alive? As of yesterday, yes. But Elena, he's in bad shape. Whoever had him worked him over pretty good. Send me the address. Morrison's going to lose his mind when he finds out you ditched protection. Then don't tell him until I'm already there. Elena slipped away from the safe house the next morning, using a combination of Luca's old tricks and pure determination. She stole a car, something she'd never done before and hoped never to do again, and drove to Connecticut. The private hospital was small, exclusive, the kind of place that didn't ask questions if you paid in cash. Elena walked in like she belonged there, found the floor Tommy had indicated, and started checking rooms. She found him in the third one she tried. Luca lay in the hospital bed unconscious, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. His face was bruised beyond recognition, one arm in a cast, bandages covering most of his torso. But he was breathing. He was alive. Elena sat down beside him, took his uninjured hand, and started to cry. "You stubborn idiot," she whispered. "You couldn't just stay safe, could you? Had to keep fighting, keep protecting everyone else, had to be a hero." No response. Just the steady beep of monitors. "I'm not leaving you," Elena continued. "I don't care what Morrison says, what witness protection offers. I'm not disappearing to Portland while you're here. We started this together, and we're finishing it together." She sat there for hours, just holding his hand, refusing to let go. A nurse came to check on him, gave Elena a suspicious look, but didn't kick her out. As the sun set outside the window, Elena felt Luca's fingers tighten on hers. Just slightly, barely perceptible, but it was there. She leaned closer. "Luca, can you hear me?" His eyes flickered, opened, unfocused at first, then gradually finding her face. "Elena," he whispered, his voice rough. "You're supposed to be in Portland." "Screw Portland," she squeezed his hand. "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." He tried to smile, manage something that was almost won. "We won?" "We won. Shaw got 20 years. Everyone else went down with him. Your recordings, Bobby's testimony, it was enough." "Good." His eyes started to close. "You should still go to Portland. Safer." "Not without you." "Elena, no arguments. We've been through too much for you to push me away now." She leaned forward. "Besides, who's going to make sure you don't get yourself killed recovering if I'm not here?" Luca's laugh turned into a cough. "Fair point. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to heal. I'm going to stay with you. And when you're strong enough, we're going to figure out what comes next, together. Morrison's going to kill you. Morrison can get in line." This time, Luca's smile was real. "Okay, together." Elena stayed with him through the night, through the pain medication and the nightmares and the slow process of healing. She called Morrison the next day and weathered his explosion with remarkable calm. "You do realize you just destroyed months of careful planning?" he yelled. "I do. And that you're now a security nightmare?" "Yep. And that I could have you arrested for obstruction?" "You could, but you won't. Because you know this is the right call." Morrison sighed. "You're as stubborn as your father." "I'll take that as a compliment." In the end, Morrison couldn't argue with results. Luca was alive, Elena was safe, and the trials were over. What came next was up to them. Recovery was slow, painful. Luca had 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung, and more bruises than Elena could count. But he was alive, and every day he got a little stronger. They spent the time planning, not running, not hiding, but actually planning a future that didn't involve violence and corruption and looking over their shoulders. "I'm thinking Maine," Luca said one day, about a month into his recovery. "Small town, quiet, somewhere we can disappear without actually disappearing. What would we do there?" "Whatever we want. You could teach, I could, I don't know, fix boats, build furniture, something normal." "Normal," Elena repeated. "That's a strange concept." "Worth trying, though." "Yeah, it is." They talked about it seriously over the following weeks, about leaving Boston, leaving the past, becoming people they'd never been before. It was terrifying and exciting and impossible to imagine. But maybe that was the point. Maybe the best futures were the ones you couldn't imagine until you were living them. 3 months after the trial ended, Elena and Luca left Boston. Not in witness protection, not running from threats, but simply choosing to leave. Tommy helped them arrange new identities, legal ones this time, with Morrison's reluctant blessing. They drove north toward Maine and a future they'd have to build from scratch. It wasn't perfect. They both still had nightmares, still jumped at sudden noises, still carried the weight of everything that had happened. But they also had each other, and hope, and the knowledge that they'd survived the worst and come out the other side changed but whole. As they crossed into Maine, Elena looked over at Luca behind the wheel. "You ready for this?" she asked. "No idea. You?" "Not even a little bit." They smiled at each other, 2 people who'd been through hell together and kept driving toward whatever came next. Behind them, Boston receded into the distance, Ahead, the future waited, uncertain and full of possibility. They had 3 days of quiet before Morrison called with news that made Elena's blood run cold. "Shaw knows," the FBI agent said without preamble. "About the recordings, about Bobby flipping, all of it. My source says he's mobilizing everything he has. Police on his payroll, private contractors, family muscle. He's going scorched earth." Luca was pacing the small living room, phone pressed to his ear. "How long do we have?" "Hours, maybe less. The leak didn't just expose Bobby, it exposed your location. That's impossible. Nobody knows about this place." "Well, somebody does now." Morrison's voice was tight. "I'm working on getting protective custody arranged, but it's going to take time. The U.S. attorney wants more assurances before committing federal resources." "We don't have time," Luca snapped. "They're coming tonight, aren't they?" A pause. "Probably, yeah." Luca hung up and turned to face the room. Elena sat on the couch, laptop open but forgotten. Bobby and Maria were at the kitchen table, their faces pale. Tommy stood by the window, Vincent at the door. "We need to move," Tommy said. "Where?" Luca's voice was sharp. "This was the last safe place. Anywhere else, we're sitting ducks. So we make a stand here." "Against how many? We're 7 people. They'll come with 20, 30, however many it takes." "Then what do you suggest?" Vincent's hand rested on his weapon. "Because sitting here waiting to die doesn't seem like much of a plan." Elena stood up, her mind racing through possibilities. "What if we don't wait?" Everyone looked at her. "What if we go to them first?" she continued, the idea forming as she spoke. "What if we force the confrontation on our terms in a public place, somewhere they can't just murder us without consequences?" "They'll kill us anyway," Bobby said, his voice shaking. "You don't understand how they operate. Public, private, it doesn't matter. They'll find a way." "Not if we have witnesses, not if we have press." Elena turned to Luca. "Morrison said the U.S. attorney wants more assurances. What if we give them a spectacle they can't ignore?" Luca's eyes sharpened. "You want to go public. I want to blow this whole thing wide open before they can shut us down. Call a press conference, release everything we have, make it impossible for them to cover it up." "That's insane," Maria said. "The second you go public, you're dead. Shaw has reporters in his pocket, cops who'll arrest you on sight, judges who'll make sure you never see trial." "Maybe, but he also can't kill us on live television." Elena pulled up a file on her laptop. "We have recordings, documents, proof of everything. We release it all at once to every major news outlet, every local station. We make it too big to bury." "And then what?" Bobby asked. "We go into hiding forever?" "No. We finish what we started." Elena looked at Luca. "Morrison gets his assurances because we hand him a case that's already public. The U.S. attorney can't back down without looking complicit. And Shaw has to answer questions he can't dodge anymore." Luca was quiet for a long moment, thinking it through. "It could work, but the timing has to be perfect. We call the press conference, release the evidence, and get into federal custody before Shaw's people can react." "Can Morrison arrange that?" "He'll have to. It's his case now." Luca pulled out his phone. "Tommy, Vincent, start making calls. Every journalist you know who isn't on Shaw's payroll, tell them we have evidence of corruption that goes to the top. Press conference tomorrow morning, location to be announced." "That's not enough time to organize," Vincent started. "It has to be. They're coming tonight. We move in the morning or we don't move at all." The next few hours were controlled chaos. Phone calls and emails, encrypted messages sent to reporters and bloggers, and anyone who might give them a platform. Elena compiled the evidence into a comprehensive file. Audio recordings, financial documents, photos, everything organized and annotated for maximum impact. Bobby and Maria sat in the corner, whispering to each other in Italian. Elena caught fragments, prayers maybe, or just siblings trying to comfort each other in the face of what they'd set in motion. Around midnight, Tommy came in from his watch. "We've got movement. 3 cars on the coastal road driving slow like they're looking for something." "How far?" Luca asked. 5 miles, maybe less." "They're scouting, probably waiting for full dark before they move." Luca checked his weapon. "Vincent, take Bobby and Maria to the basement. Elena, you too." "I'm not hiding in a basement while you—" "You're the one they want," Luca interrupted. "You and Bobby. You're the witnesses, the evidence. If they get you, everything we've done means nothing." His voice softened. "Please." Let me protect you. Elena wanted to argue, to insist on standing beside him, but she saw the logic, saw the fear beneath his control. This wasn't about ego or bravery, it was about survival. Okay, she said. But if shooting starts, then you run. Out the back, through the dunes, to the road. Tommy stashed a car there yesterday, keys under the mat. Like, he pressed something into her hand, a flash drive. Everything's on here, duplicate of what you compiled. If something happens to me, you get this to Morrison. You finish the job. Nothing's going to happen to you. Luca smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Probably not. But just in case. He kissed her forehead, quick and gentle, and Elena felt her throat tighten. Then Vincent was ushering her toward the basement stairs, Bobby and Maria following, and the last thing she saw was Luca standing at the window, silhouetted against the dark ocean, looking more alone than she'd ever seen him. The basement was unfinished, dirt floor and stone walls, lit by a single bare bulb. Maria immediately started crying, quiet and desperate. Bobby put his arm around her, his own face white with terror. Elena sat on an old crate and gripped the flash drive like it was a lifeline. Above them, footsteps. Low voices. The sound of weapons being checked. Then, nothing. Just waiting. The worst kind of silence. It broke with gunfire. Not the sharp cracks of pistols, but the heavy percussion of rifles, multiple shooters, a coordinated assault. Elena heard shouting, "Return fire," the sound of glass breaking. "Oh God," Maria sobbed. "Oh God. Oh God." "Quiet," Vincent hissed from his position at the stairs. "They don't know we're down here yet." More gunfire. Something exploded. A flashbang, maybe, or a grenade. The whole house shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the flash drive. This was real. This was happening. People were dying upstairs, and there was nothing she could do except sit in the dark and wait. A scream, cut short. Heavy footsteps overhead. Someone yelling orders. Then Luca's voice, loud and clear. "Basement! Go!" Vincent was already moving, pushing them toward a door Elena hadn't noticed before. "Coal chute! Comes out on the south side! Move!" Bobby went first, scrambling up the narrow passage. Maria followed, still crying. Elena hesitated, looking back at the stairs. "Go!" Vincent shoved her toward the chute. "I'll cover you." She climbed. The passage was tight, dark, claustrophobic. Her shoulders scraped against brick. Above her, Bobby's feet kicked loose debris into her face. Then she was out, emerging into cold night air and chaos. The house was burning, flames licking from blown-out windows. Bodies on the ground. She didn't look too close, didn't want to know who'd fallen. Tommy was there, firing from behind a truck, covering their escape. "Run! The car!" They ran. Through dunes and beach grass, stumbling in the dark, the sound of gunfire fading behind them. Elena's lungs burned. Her legs felt like water. But she kept moving, driven by terror and the weight of the flash drive in her pocket. The car was exactly where Luca said it would be. Bobby dove into the driver's seat, hands shaking as he searched for the keys. Found them. The engine turned over on the third try. "Wait," Elena gasped. "Luca is buying us time," Tommy said, appearing out of the darkness. He was bleeding from a cut above his eye, favoring his left side. "And if we don't use it, he's dying for nothing. Drive." Bobby drove. Elena looked back as they pulled away, watching the burning house recede into the distance. She didn't see Luca, didn't see Vincent, didn't see anyone except the flames and the shadows and the end of everything they'd built. "He's alive," Tommy said quietly, like he could read her mind. "Luca's too smart to die in a gunfight. He'll get out." But he didn't sound convinced. They drove through the night, Bobby behind the wheel, Tommy giving directions from the passenger seat. Maria and Elena huddled in the back. Nobody spoke. There was nothing to say. Around 4 in the morning, Tommy's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, his face unreadable in the dark. Then he hung up and turned to Elena. "Morrison, he can get us into federal custody, but we have to move now. Press conference is set for 9 a.m. at the courthouse. Every major outlet is coming." "And Luca?" Tommy was quiet for too long. "Tommy, where's Luca?" "He didn't make it out." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena felt the world tilt, felt something fundamental crack inside her chest. "What does that mean? Is he I don't know. Morrison's people got to the house around 2. Found bodies, found evidence of a fight, but no Luca. No Vincent either. Tommy's voice was careful. Could mean they escaped. Could mean they were taken. Could mean, don't. Elena cut him off. Don't say it. But she was thinking it. Luca was dead. Killed in the assault, or captured and executed after. Either way, gone. The man who'd helped her, protected her, believed in her enough to risk everything, gone. And she was still here, still breathing, still carrying the evidence that had cost him his life. The flash drive felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What do we do? Bobby asked, his voice small. We finish it, Elena said, surprised by how steady she sounded. We go to the press conference. We release everything. We make sure Luca's sacrifice meant something. And if they kill us too? Then they kill us. But at least we'll die knowing we tried. Morrison met them at a federal building downtown, ushering them through back corridors to a secure room. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his tie crooked, his shirt wrinkled. You're alive, he said, like he didn't quite believe it. Some of us, Tommy replied. Luca? Missing, probably dead. Morrison closed his eyes briefly. I'm sorry, He stopped. I'm sorry. Save it. Elena pulled out the flash drive. Everything's on here. Financial records, recordings, documents. It's enough to take down Shaw and everyone connected to him. You're sure you want to do this? Once you go public, there's no taking it back. You'll have targets on your backs for the rest of your lives. We already have targets on our backs. At least this way it'll mean something. Morrison took the flash drive, plugged it into a laptop. As he scrolled through the files, his expression changed from skeptical to shocked to determined. This is incredible. This is everything. He looked up at Elena. You understand what this means? Shaw's political career is over. Half the city council goes down with him. Police chiefs, judges, developers. You're dismantling the entire power structure. Good. It's going to be ugly. Trials will take years. Retaliation will be brutal. I know. Morrison studied her for a long moment. Your father would be proud. Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until this was finished. The press conference is in 4 hours, Morrison said. I'll brief you on what to say, what questions to expect. The U.S. attorney will be there to announce the indictments. You'll be the star witnesses. What about protection? Full witness protection. New identities, relocation, the works. You'll disappear after this. Elena thought about that. Disappearing. Leaving behind her teaching, her students, everything she'd built. Starting over in some anonymous town with a new name and a new life. It felt like dying, but it also felt like freedom. Okay, she said. Let's do it. The courthouse steps at 9 in the morning were packed. Reporters, cameras, curious onlookers drawn by the promise of scandal. Elena stood behind Morrison, Bobby and Maria flanking her, and felt the weight of every eye on her. The U.S. attorney spoke first, outlining the charges in dry legal language. Conspiracy, corruption, racketeering, murder. The list went on, damning and comprehensive. Then it was Elena's turn. She stepped up to the microphone, her notes shaking in her hands. For a moment she couldn't speak. The crowd blurred, the cameras felt accusing. Then she thought of her father, of Luca, of everyone who'd died trying to expose the truth. And she found her voice. 6 years ago, my father, Andrea Rossi, was murdered for investigating corruption in this city. For 6 years, I've lived with questions nobody could answer, with suspicions nobody would confirm. Today, I'm giving you the answers he died finding. She detailed everything. The protection scheme, the payoffs, the connection between organized crime and city government. She played audio clips of the recordings Bobby had made, watching faces in the crowd go pale as they heard Shaw's chief of staff coordinating with crime bosses. She showed financial documents proving the flow of money from illegal operations to legitimate political campaigns. She named names, connecting dots that powerful people had spent years trying to keep separate. And she did it all while knowing that somewhere, Luca was either dead or watching, that this moment was the culmination of everything they'd worked for. The reporters erupted with questions, but Morrison stepped in, ending the conference. The evidence speaks for itself. The U.S. Attorney's Office will be coordinating with federal agencies for arrests and prosecution. That's all. Elena was ushered back inside, away from the cameras and the chaos. In a secured conference room, she collapsed into a chair, adrenaline leaving her system like air from a punctured balloon. "You did good," Tommy said. "Real good. Luca should have been here." "Yeah, he should have." Tommy looked away. "But he'd be proud. What you just did, that took guts." The next few hours were a blur of debriefings and paperwork. The U.S. Attorney wanted statements from all of them, detailed accounts of everything they'd witnessed and recorded. Bobby and Maria were separated, questioned individually to verify their stories matched. Elena sat across from a federal prosecutor and recited facts until her voice went hoarse. Dates, names, amounts. The mechanics of corruption laid out in painful detail. It was after 7 when Morrison finally appeared in the doorway. "We need to talk," he said. "Privately." Elena followed him to an empty office. Morrison closed the door, his expression unreadable. "We found Luca." Elena's heart stopped. "Is he alive?" "Barely." Morrison pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of a hospital room. Luca was in the bed, bandaged and unconscious, hooked up to machines. They hit him pretty hard, broken ribs, punctured lung, concussion, but he's stable. Doctors say he'll make it. Elena felt her knees go weak. She grabbed the desk for support. "Where is he?" "Mass General, under guard." "The Castellanos know he's alive, and they're putting money out for anyone who finishes the job." Morrison pocketed his phone. "You can't see him. It's too dangerous." "I don't care." "Elena, I need to see him." Her voice cracked. "Please, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Morrison sighed. "You're supposed to go into witness protection tonight. New identity, new location. If you see Luca first, if anyone follows you, then make sure nobody follows me." They stared at each other. Finally, Morrison nodded. 10 minutes. That's all I can give you. And if there's even a hint of trouble, my people pull you out immediately." "Deal." The drive to Mass General was tense. Elena sandwiched between 2 federal agents in an unmarked car. They entered through a service entrance, took a freight elevator to the ICU floor, moved through corridors with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. Luca's room was at the end of the hall, 2 armed guards outside. Morrison nodded to them and they stepped aside. 10 minutes, he reminded Elena. "Starting now." She went in alone. Luca looked terrible. His face was bruised and swollen, one eye completely shut. Bandages wrapped his chest, and an IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. The machines around him beeped steadily, marking time. Elena pulled a chair close to the bed and took his hand carefully, avoiding the IV line. "Hey," she said quietly. "It's me." No response. Just breathing, mechanical and steady. "We did it. The press conference went off without a problem. Every news outlet in the country is running the story. Shaw's finished. The Castellanos are finished. All of them." Her voice caught. "We won." Still nothing, but his hand was warm in hers. Alive. "Morrison says I have to go into witness protection. New name, new city, new everything. It's the only way to stay safe." She wiped at her eyes with her free hand. "I don't want to go, but I don't see another option." The machines beeped. Outside, someone laughed at a nurse's station. "I wish you could hear me," Elena continued. "I wish you could tell me this was worth it, that your mother would be proud, that we did the right thing." She squeezed his hand gently. "I wish I could stay." A slight pressure. So faint she almost missed it. His fingers tightening on hers. Elena looked up sharply. Luca's eyes were still closed, his expression unchanged. But there it was again, a definite squeeze. "Luca, can you hear me?" Nothing. Then, barely audible, "Stay!" His eyes opened, just a crack, focused on her with obvious effort. "You're awake," Elena breathed. "Feels like hit by truck." His voice was rough, each word clearly painful. "You okay?" "Am I okay? You're the one in a hospital bed." "Yeah, but you're the important one." He tried to smile, managed a grimace. "Did we win?" "We won." Good. His eyes started to close again. Then worth it. Luca, I have to go. Witness protection. They're taking me tonight. His eyes snapped open. No. I don't have a choice. There's always choice. He coughed, winced. Don't let them bury you. You're not meant for hiding. I'm also not meant to die. Neither am I. But here we are. His grip on her hand tightened. Elena, listen. I've been planning something. Exit strategy. New identity. Clean break. Another cough. Was going to ask you to come. Come where? Anywhere. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we could start over. His voice was getting weaker. No more crime. No more violence. Just us. Elena felt tears spill over. You're delirious. Probably, but I mean it. He met her eyes. Come with me. When I'm healed, when this settles down, we disappear together. That's insane. So is everything else we've done. A ghost of his old smile. What's one more insane choice? Morrison knocked on the door. Time's up. I have to go, Elena said. Think about it, please. She leaned down, kissed his forehead. I'll think about it. Elena? Yeah? Thank you for seeing more in me than I saw in myself. Thank you for helping me finish what my father started. Morrison opened the door. Now, Elena? She pulled away from Luca, from the hospital bed, from a future she couldn't quite imagine but desperately wanted. At the door she looked back. Luca had his eyes closed again, but his hand was raised slightly. A small wave, goodbye. Or maybe not goodbye. Maybe see you later. Elena let Morrison lead her away, her mind already racing with possibilities. The next 6 months were a blur of trials and testimony. Shaw was arrested, along with 14 other city officials. The Castellano family was dismantled, its leadership indicted on dozens of charges. Bobby and Maria testified, their faces blurred on television, their voices distorted. Elena testified too, walking into courtrooms with federal protection, facing down lawyers who tried to discredit her, judges who seemed skeptical. She told the truth over and over until it became routine, until the weight of it stopped crushing her. Slowly, the case came together. Guilty verdicts, prison sentences, justice, imperfect and messy but real. And through it all, Elena thought about Luca's offer, about disappearing together, starting fresh, becoming people who weren't defined by violence and corruption and the worst of what Boston had made them. She didn't see him again. Morrison said he'd been released from the hospital, had disappeared the moment he could walk, witness protection of his own, probably, or just running from everything that remained of his old life. Elena hoped he was healing, hoped he'd found peace. She also hoped he'd meant what he said. The final trial ended in March. Shaw got 20 years, no parole. His chief of staff got 15. The others got varying sentences, but they all went away, and the power structure they'd built collapsed like a house of cards. Morrison met Elena outside the courthouse, his expression tired but satisfied. It's over, he said. Really over. What happens now? Now you disappear. The marshals have everything arranged. New name, new city, new job. You'll be safe. Elena nodded, but her heart wasn't in it. That night, alone in a federal safe house, she got a text from an unknown number. Coastal Maine. Small town called Pemaquid. Coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow, noon. Come alone or don't come at all. No signature. But Elena knew who it was from. She looked at the text for a long time. This was her moment. Accept witness protection, disappear into the bureaucracy, live a safe, anonymous life. Or ignore every piece of advice she'd been given, trust a man who'd built his fortune on violence, and chase a future that might not exist. The smart choice was obvious. Elena had never been good at smart choices. She packed a bag that night, left a note for Morrison, just, thank you for everything. I'm choosing my own path now, and was gone before dawn. The drive to Pemaquid took 7 hours. Elena kept checking her mirrors, watching for tails, expecting federal agents to pull her over at any moment. But nobody followed. Nobody stopped her. The coffee shop was exactly where the text said it would be, a small place with weathered siding and a view of the harbor. Elena parked across the street, her heart hammering. She almost didn't go in, almost turned around, drove back to Boston, accepted the safety that Morrison was offering. But her father hadn't raised a coward, and Luca had taught her that the best things in life required the most terrifying leaps. She went inside. The shop was nearly empty. An elderly couple at one table, a teenager on a laptop at another, and in the corner, facing the door, a man she almost didn't recognize. Luca had grown a beard, lightened his hair. He wore glasses, a flannel shirt, jeans that looked actually broken in rather than expensively distressed. He looked like a local, like someone who'd lived here for years. He also looked happy. "You came," he said when she sat down across from him. "I came. I wasn't sure you would." "Neither was I." Elena studied his face, looking for signs of the injuries, the trauma. "How are you?" "Healing. Still sore, but functional." He smiled. "Got a job at the boatyard, fixing engines mostly. It's honest work." "Honest work? That's new for you." "Yeah, turns out I'm not terrible at it." He reached across the table, took her hand. "I meant what I said. In the hospital. About starting over." "I know." "Is that a yes?" Elena looked at their joined hands, at the man across from her who'd been a crime boss and a protector and a partner in the most insane crusade she'd ever undertaken, who'd risked everything to help her find justice for her father, who'd become, against all odds and logic, the person she trusted most in the world. "I need to know something first," she said. "Anything. Are you really out? Or is this just another version of the same thing with a better disguise?" Luca was quiet for a moment. "I liquidated everything. Every business, every property, every connection. Gave most of the money to Tommy to distribute to the families of people who worked for me. Kept enough to start clean." He met her eyes. "I'm not that person anymore, Elena. I can't be. That life almost killed me. Actually killed parts of me that mattered. And you think you can just walk away? That the people you crossed won't come looking? They think I'm dead. Morrison helped me stage it. Car accident, burned beyond recognition, dental records from a body that came through the morgue that same week." He pulled out a driver's license, showed her. "Daniel Hayes, address in Pemaquid." "I'm not Luca Moretti anymore. He died in that fire." "Daniel Hayes," Elena repeated. "And who am I supposed to be?" "Whoever you want." He slid a second ID across the table. "Sarah Hayes, same address. My wife, if you'll have me. Or just Sarah, living her own life, teaching at the local high school that just posted a job opening for an English teacher." Elena stared at the ID, at the new name, the new life, the possibility of something she'd never let herself imagine. "This is crazy," she said. "Completely. We barely know each other. We know the important things. I could be walking into a trap. You could be walking into a future." Luca squeezed her hand. "Or you could walk away. Go into witness protection, live safe, forget any of this happened. I won't blame you. I won't even be hurt. I'll just be grateful you made it out alive." Elena looked past him, out the window at the harbor. Small boats bobbed in the water, gulls wheeled overhead. It was peaceful, simple, everything her life hadn't been for the past year. She thought about her father, about what he'd want for her. Not revenge. They'd gotten that. Not justice alone. They'd achieved that too. But happiness. Peace. A life lived on her own terms. "The high school job," she said. "Is it permanent?" Luca's face lit up. "They're interviewing next week." "And the house?" "Small, 2 bedrooms. Needs work, but it's got a view of the ocean and nobody asking questions about our past." "No more secrets?" "No more secrets," he promised. "Just us and whatever life we build together." Elena picked up the ID, turned it over in her hands. Sarah Hayes, teacher, wife. Person with a future instead of just a past. "Okay," she said. "Okay." "Okay." She smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months. "Let's do this. Let's be Daniel and Sarah Hayes. Let's teach high school and fix boats and live somewhere quiet where nobody's trying to kill us." Luca stood up, came around the table, pulled her into a hug that was careful of his still healing ribs but fierce in its intensity. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for giving me a second chance. Thank you for helping me finish what my father started. They stood there in that small coffee shop in a town nobody had heard of, holding each other like they could rewrite their entire history through sheer force of will. And maybe they could. Maybe that's what second chances were. Not forgetting what came before, but choosing what came next. Outside, the ocean stretched endless and clean. Inside, two people who'd been lost in dark forests found their way into light. It wasn't perfect. They still had nightmares, still jumped at loud noises, still checked over their shoulders more than normal people should. But they also had quiet mornings and honest work and conversations that didn't revolve around survival. They had each other. 6 months later, Elena stood in front of a classroom of bored teenagers, teaching them about redemption in literature, and thought about how far she'd come. About her father, who taught her to fight for truth. About Luca, who taught her that people could change. About herself, who'd learned that justice and happiness didn't have to be mutually exclusive. That night, she came home to find Daniel in the kitchen, attempting to cook dinner and failing spectacularly. "How was school?" he asked, scraping burned rice into the trash. "Good. The kids are actually starting to engage with the material." She kissed his cheek. "How was the boatyard?" "Peaceful. Fixed 3 engines, didn't threaten anyone, didn't get threatened. Solid day." They ordered pizza, ate it on the porch, watching the sunset, and talked about nothing important. The weather. The neighbors. Whether they should get a dog. Normal things, boring things, beautiful things. Later, lying in bed, Elena thought about the path that had brought her here. The violence and fear and loss. The impossible choices and dangerous alliances. The moment she'd stood on courthouse steps and exposed corruption that went to the city's core. All of it had led to this, a small house on the Maine coast, a man who'd become her partner in every way that mattered, and a life built on truth instead of lies. Her father would be proud. She was sure of that. And Luca, Daniel, whoever he was now, he'd kept his promise. He'd become more than what the world made him, more than violence and power and fear. He'd become someone who deserved a second chance. They both had. "Elena?" His voice in the dark. "Sarah," she corrected gently. "We're Sarah and Daniel now, remember?" "Right, Sarah." He pulled her closer. "You ever regret it? Walking away from everything?" "Every day," she admitted. "And also never. It's complicated." "Yeah, it is." He was quiet for a moment. "But you're happy?" "I'm happy." "You?" "Happier than I thought I'd ever be." He kissed the top of her head. "Thank you for taking the insane leap with me. Thank you for being worth the leap." They fell asleep like that, tangled together, two people who'd fought their way through hell and come out the other side not unscathed but whole. In the morning, they'd wake up and be Sarah and Daniel Hayes, teacher and mechanic, living quiet lives in a town that didn't know their history. But tonight, for just a moment, they were Elena and Luca, survivors and fighters, and proof that even the darkest forests eventually give way to light. And that was enough. That was everything. The story didn't end with perfect redemption or complete healing. Some wounds never fully close. Some memories never fade. But it ended with choice. The choice to move forward, to build something new, to believe that people are more than their worst moments. It ended with two people finding each other in the chaos and deciding to hold on. It ended with hope. And sometimes that's the best ending there is.